Are there any Polar Express passengers in need of refreshment?
Santa Claus and ho ho ho.
Where's the Tylenol? Welcome to the party, pal.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
Son of a nutcracker!
Papa Rizzo. I knew you weren't suited for literature.
What gave it away was the years of hardly reading anything.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Cheap Seat Critics podcast, where today we are covering the Muppet Christmas Carol, our third Christmas Carol this season. I tripped over my own tongue. That is true of what I just said, but it's not the third thing in this season. Anywho, with me today we have...
Hello, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, a Geeky Writer.
I'm Crimson Maroon.
And I'm Sprinks. And hey, if you're listening from... Let's go with the Cratchit's house on Christmas Eve. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Blue Sky. We're over there now, all under Cheap Seat Critics. We also have YouTube and Rumble for visual side of things, if you're interested in that. We also have a LetterBoxd if you care to see the graphs of everything averaged out of what we cover. But, yeah, Muppets Christmas Carol, 3 out of 4. Of what we have. Let's start with histories, and then we'll get into facts, and then we'll get into the coverage.
3 out of 4 for rating. Wow. But no, it's
That's not, not what I meant. No.
I know.
75%.
Jesus,
Wow.
that's low. I didn't expect that from you.
7.5.
You say we're doing histories?
Yeah, go right ahead, Ryder.
Alright, so, I had only seen this film once. Unironically, when Sprinks used to be my roommate. We ended up watching it for Christmas one year, because I had never seen it before, and he took that as a cardinal sin against mankind. So, yeah. Honestly, I was happy to watch it. I very much enjoyed it then. Very much enjoyed it now. It was interesting to go through it with a more objective, like artistic comb, to kind of, and to kind of differentiate it from the rest of I guess, the remakes, the rehashes, the retellings of the same story. But yeah, so I've seen it twice.
All right, and your history, Crimson?
All right. As Ryder said, Sprinks has said that it was a sin that I haven't seen this. So when Sprinks has come over to my house several times through these years, we never watched it because I didn't want to watch it. But now it's time. I have now seen it for the podcast. And before this, I have seen the scene of them jumping the fence, the rat jumping the fence. I've seen that. Rizzo, the rat. And I've seen an image of future yet to come and of present. I haven't seen past before. And that's it.
All right. Let me go with my history then. This is probably the upteenth time I've seen this movie. I can't recall how many times I've seen it. I grew up with it. Watch it practically every year, even not around the holiday of Christmas sometimes. Yeah, I just watched a lot with my family. It's very quotable. The songs, I think we made playlists of the songs intertwined with other Christmas songs that we'd listen to. Yeah, I got the only merch I think I have 2 Funko Pops of Muppet Christmas Carol, Scrooge and Charles Dickens with Rizzo. I know there's a whole collection, I think, of like 6 of them. But
one day.
And
You've seen this more than 20 times?
oh yeah. I've seen this more than 20 times.
Okay.
It's on the fence if I've seen it more than 50 times.
Oh, jeez Louise. All right. That's a whole new...
Well,
whole
my
new
best
beast.
guess is first time I saw this, I was probably like 4, I think. I was very
First
young.
time that you remember seeing it.
Yeah, I'm like, I just know I was very, very young seeing it. So,
All right.
but yeah, so then we'll go into the facts. Let everyone know, I was pretty adamant, and we all watched the same version. We've all watched the extended version of Muppet Christmas Carol, which adds 3.5, 4 minutes. And I was very adamant that we do, because it does change things.
Oh darn! I knew I forgot something. I'm kidding. I'm making your chain, Sprinks. Don't sweat yet.
Oh boy, thanks. First we have the initial release date of the film of December 11th, 1992. And before I continue any further, I always forget. These are all taken off the internet. Take them with a grain of salt of how true or false they may be. I did not sit down and talk to a Henson relative at all to get, more truthful out of it. So, the initial theatrical runtime of the movie is an hour 25 minutes. However, the extended says an hour 30. The budget of the movie was 12 million USD, where the box office was 27.3 million only in the US and 33.3 million worldwide.
Yep.
It is rated G. I don't know if this is I feel like was Spirit rated G? Like, I don't think this is the
Yeah.
first G movie we've covered.
Spirit was G. We were surprised by that.
Okay, so this possibly might be the second G movie we've covered.
I don't remember if Airbud was G or PG.
Ooh,
But
Airbud
continue.
could be G. But yeah, okay. Its genre is listed as family/musical. This is the directorial debut of Brian Henson, the son of the creator of the Muppets, Jim Henson, who has directed other things such as Muppets Treasure Island, The Happy Time Murders, and 3 episodes of Dinosaurs. I didn't jot it down, but I looked at it. It was like season 3 and 4, episode 1 for both, and then like episode 13 of season 4 or something.
Dinosaurs, great show.
Well, it was a Jim Henson connected puppeteering. Then I have a couple fun facts. Which one do I start with? In an interview, Kermit the Frog stated that the most important piece of acting advice he ever got was from Sir Michael Caine on the set of this movie, and his advice was never blink.
Well, way to go, Kermit. He took it to heart. I don't think I ever saw him blink.
Yeah, neither did I. I don't think he really kept it to heart. I didn't see him blink in was it 2011 Muppet movie or Muppets Most Wanted.
He's quite dedicated.
Oh yeah.
Committed to that.
This movie has multiple background Easter eggs of titles on store buildings. So one of them is Duncan and Kenworthy, which is named for the producer Duncan Kenworthy, who is the creator of Fraggle Rock. And then towards the end of the movie, there's a store called Statler and Waldorf, which is named after the 2 hecklers who play Jacob and Robert Marley.
I did catch that one.
There's another one in the background called Micklewhite, which is actually Sir Michael Caine was born. His birth name was Maurice Joseph Micklewhite.
Micklewhite. Interesting. Michael Caine has more of a ring to it.
A bit, yeah. But many actors do that.
Oh yeah, I mean they're called stage names.
Yeah,
word name for it.
The Ghost of Christmas Past effects were created by making a special puppet that was operated in a tank of water and then green screened into the movie to make it look like it was floating.
Yeah, I figured that.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty ingenious. I do enjoy it when they things when you get creative little nuggets like that in films like this.
Yeah. 2 more I have here. The emphasis on the line, and Tiny Tim, who did not die, is for the connection to the book where the word not is fully capitalized because the original editors for the story didn't know if Tiny Tim lived or not, where Dickens went in and wrote it in.
All right.
That's funny.
And the last fact I have here is when originally shown in theaters, Belle's song When Love Is Gone was cut from the film. Director Brian Henson protested this decision, and then head of Disney at the time, Jeffrey Katzenberg, felt the song was too sad for a children's movie. The removal leaves the scene quite short and abrupt and damages the pacing. It was reinstated on full-screen home video copies of the film, including the Laserdisc, VHS, and DVD release at the insistence of Brian Henson.
good for
Yeah,
him. I'm completely against the Disney CEO on this one. To be fair, I'm against them for a lot of choices they make, but this one in particular. Children.
yeah. I went in and watched the movie and then the scene because I wanted to take in the theatrical thing here. And yeah, I I noted seems like something's missing here. And then once I saw what the missing scene was, like, well, yeah, okay,
Oh, so
ridiculous.
you watched the theatrical, then went back and watched the one deleted scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I watched the theatrical originally too. That's the one you showed me.
Well, no, Spriggs is saying
Yeah, I
pausing
know,
to
specifically
watch
for the podcast. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, didn't click on or watch the full length version where it's incorporated in. Gotcha. All right, well, those are all the facts I have, unless anyone has any others.
No, I don't think
I mean, I could just continue harping away on Disney CEO for a bit, but
No,
good.
let's not. Let's not. This is the season of jolly. Let's tone that. So today, the structure we're going with is a 3-act structure where the movie's cut up into half-hour kind of segments about where the first one's going to go from the beginning of the movie all the way to the first spirit arriving when the bell tolls 1, and then second act is from there up to when Ghost of Christmas Present and Scrooge leave the Cratchit's house, and then the last act is from practically the graveyard of Old Man Christmas Present to the end of the movie.
Sweet.
And then within the acts, we can popcorn around if something suits your fancy more than something else. With that, we'll start with Act 1, and let's start with Crimson being a first-time watcher.
All right, and I'll start with an overarching question, as I sometimes do, and a statement. I like that we are watching a bunch of different versions of this story. It's kind of fun to compare. And my question is this the best Scrooge we've come across so far?
Oh, so far, so the 3.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say...
Or what's your ranking, actually, I guess.
Okay, I think that's better, the ranking. I think best is hard to pinpoint, because they all have something different to them that stands out. I have this one listed. I think this is the angriest Scrooge of the 3.
Interesting. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah. I would never have pinned this one as the angriest Scrooge.
I would have had him at the bottom of the angry list.
Oh,
That's
really?
actually why I posed the question. I think this is the least Scrooge of what we've seen so far.
Oh, interesting.
So
why would you rank him at the top then, Springs, as the angriest Scrooge?
Oh, I had the absolute yelling out at his employees, the hatred towards Christmas, the against all thing, rather than more of the George C. Scott seemed a little more just tired of everything. He wasn't so angry or bitter towards it all. He was just kind of, you keep your Christmas, I'll keep mine kind of sense. And then the first one, I would say, is definitely angrier than the 80s version, but it seemed to only be in instances where he's pushed, I think. Like when the charity workers come up, then he gets angry. He's not like angry from the start, which I saw with this Scrooge, because Bob Cratchit asked one question to Ebenezer in the Muppet version, and then his next sentence is just an explosion of anger. So I took it as being the most angriest.
Okay. Laying it out that way, I can see how you see it that way, yeah. Kind of a weird one for me, because the others felt like Scrooge was an actual character. Not to say this one's not a character, but this one felt more like a play, I guess. It didn't feel like we were actually watching someone in their natural habitat. And the introduction of puppet characters might be a facet to that for me, but whenever he was mad or something, it didn't feel like he was actually mad. I don't know. It just felt like he was raising his voice, but his emotion didn't seem to raise with it.
I think, because I've been trying to think of how to articulate this. I don't think this is the most angry Scrooge, I think he would be the most bitter Scrooge to me. Because his outbursts aren't necessarily out of anger, they're more like to get his workers back to work. Though because of like how the dynamic plays off, I totally get why you would see this as the angriest Scrooge. I think bitter is probably where I would quantify that emotion personally. Um, so that being said, where this Scrooge falls in comparison to the other three, uh, it's it gets very complicated for at least in my notes and how I describe it because this Scrooge I think is the most subtle of the previous two Scrooges that we've covered. This one was more on the subtle acting wise. Um, and for me, I attribute a lot of why this Scrooge is still really, really great to Michael Caine being just a phenomenal actor because he's given far less to work with comparatively to the other Scrooges, but he's able to still be the character, his own version of the character, and make it his own.
Yeah, I think maybe angriest isn't the right word to go. I would say that Michael Caine Scrooge is the most humbug of all the Scrooge. This Scrooge hates Christmas. I don't think the other two necessarily hate Christmas itself. They just don't like that money's lost. They're more greedy than this Scrooge, I think.
Okay, yeah. Phrasing
Especially since the last two have one employee of Bob Cratchit, and this one has a lot of employers.
A lot of employees, but
employees, yeah.
Yeah, I when you actually that just kind of tickles something in your brain. When you said that, it actually makes sense because the previous Scrooges are a lot more. Well, you get a payoff with their family, like directly. So, like, George C. Scott's Scrooge, the first one of the payoffs to that Scrooge is him going to visit Fred and him like having a long moment with his wife and his nephew. And spoiler alert, I guess, for this one, that's a little bit glossed over, and they kind of rush through that a little bit. It doesn't mean that it's not important to the Scrooge's story, but
in comparison, it's very different.
Yeah.
I also think in isolation, but yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. So one of the things that when you're doing musicals, the music is typically like the character work being done in a way sometimes. So this Scrooge, to boil it down, yes, I do think the first two Scrooges are more greedy. It's not necessarily their bitter hatred towards Christmas that's a driving motivator. It's the money that's also a driving motivator. So there's multiple facets, I think, to the other Scrooges. This one is not saying it makes the character any worse. I think this Scrooge is a little bit more simplified because the greed is not as much of a factor in this one. It's very much the I hate Christmas. It's a different focus for the Scrooge, I think. And it simplifies the character, and again, the character technically has less. There's less for the character to be because they have less lines of dialogue and less screen time. So that's why I think Michael Caine's again a great acting choice for this particular Scrooge, because he has to convey as much as possible with as little as possible.
Yes, I believe I read somewhere. I didn't look up the fact for it for this film, but I read at a time that in Muppets Christmas Carol, Michael Caine treated the Muppets as fellow like Shakespearean actors compared to Muppets Treasure Island, where Tim Curry was Long John Silver and he treated himself as a fellow Muppet.
Maybe that's why it felt more like a play to me than a normal movie.
Maybe I could definitely see that being playing into it because I mean if you knowing that he treated the rest of them like Shakespearean actors, that kind of makes sense because of just the dynamic and the way he plays off of them. Because obviously in the Treasure Island, he's a little bit more like unhinged, I guess would be the portrayal.
Yeah, far more charismatically energetic.
Yeah. Did we answer your question, Crimson?
I suppose we did.
I guess Crimson, for your original question of ranking, that hasn't been answered. What would we rank these three individually? I assume is what you were asking.
Yeah. I guess I'll start. For me, 35, George C. Scott, Michael Caine.
I think I would do George C. Scott, Michael Caine, 35.
Interesting. I think I have 35 Michael Caine, George C. Scott.
Wow, 3 different rankings.
All difference. Yeah, that's good.
To me, George C. Scott was just one who was just tired of it all, which is a different approach, but it didn't seem like against what Seymour Hicks did in 35 or what Michael Caine has in Muppets.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be honest. My scale right there is more of personal preference, not necessarily the objective portrayal of the character.
Oh, well then, two different scaling. Then my ranking would be different then if it was that. I went with the approach of Ebenezer. If mine was like my enjoyment of it, Seymour Hicks is at the bottom, then George C. Scott in the middle, and Michael Caine number 1.
Yeah, if I had read the book recently and I was just like refreshed on what that character is, that might affect my subjective outlook. But in reality, I just see them playing. I play them all. I see them all playing the same character. I just see them focusing on different character traits that are being highlighted going from one to the next. So each one has a specific focus that's embellished more and that they focus on. So I think they all do something really, really well. But, like I said, I didn't rank them objectively because I do think they all essentially accomplished their objective goals as each respective Scrooge.
Yeah, which falls back onto Crimson's first thing, that is, it's great seeing all these different interpretations of this character.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Do you have anything you'd want to add more to that, Crimson? Because we kind of just went off again.
No, I'm sure we'll talk more on this iterations of Scrooge through the pod and any parallels to the previous we've covered.
Parallels, deviations.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Well, I'll go with a very beginning thing I noticed is the start of the movie has within memory for Jim Henson versus a movie where it would have it at the end of the credits.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Yeah, that's a unique observation. What do we think, I guess? This might just be me. Were we flying over a model at the beginning and then kind of cutting into a set?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it was a great smooth transition of the tiles.
Okay. Yeah, I was just making sure because it looked like we were flying over models in the opening shot, and then it turned into a set, which I think, again, like you, I thought it was reasonably well done for its time. Like, I wasn't expecting perfection, but it's good. I liked it. It conveyed the point across.
I thought it was okay. I think Beetlejuice did it better.
Oh, this isn't Beetlejuice.
Well, no, I mean the opening of Beetlejuice was flying over a model, and then Real City to model, other way around.
Yeah.
I do like how, though, in this version we actually see a scale of London versus where in George C. Scott we don't really see how big the town is at all.
Yeah. Again,
that's pretty much like 2 streets in that one that we see.
Yeah. Once again, it's the world of outside of Beyond Scrooge is a lot more fleshed out in this one comparatively to George C. Scott's version.
I agree.
So a bit more muddied, though, and I'll use that to jump to a point. The music. What is its place in this? I bring up the same kind of question I did in Dr. Horrible. Is this actually happening in the world, or is this for the audience?
Great question. Great question.
Funny thing is, I don't remember my answer because whatever my answer was then is probably going to be the same now.
Well, I mean, each movie with music can be different. I mean, Greatest Showman, we discussed some were, some weren't. Dr. Horrible was different than that.
Yeah. I took this one as their lines being, watching it for the pod, I took it as these are words being said in world, but to us, the audience, they're coming across as songs.
Okay. I think you said that in Greatest Showman thing. But yeah, I could see that as a thing. that does open up some worms we'll cover with that. What do you think, writer?
I'm thinking about it still. Because like I said, I didn't really look at the songs that way. Again, I looked at the songs more as a this is character. It's essentially this is where the character stuff is happening, kind of moments. Like this is what would take the place in like exposition, if that makes sense. Exposition or either like, it takes the place of like what would be character moments or like exposition is because this is like we're getting background on Scrooge and then we have a song. We have a song later on with Present that's kind of already edging Scrooge towards a character change. So I took that as like this is a character changing moment that would happen normally in a story around this point in like a archetypal adventure. So I had a much different intake of the music my objective walkthrough of it.
I see.
That being said, I can understand why you asked the question. I just don't have an answer for you because I didn't look at it that way at all.
Yeah, I asked this because it can help it or damage it depending on what the answer is.
Yeah, but like I said, I think I feel like I've said this before, and if I haven't, apologies. I always take the medium as best I can at face value. So I just slide the music in as a corporeal part of it, I guess. Though I think I've heard your retort on this before.
Yeah, now a couple examples that I'm going to bring this back up in Act 2 for something, but something to reference in Act 1 is the opening song of Scrooge walking through the town and everyone bad mouthing and talking how horrible he is and stuff. And by the end of the song, he turns around and the whole crowd's there, and then they disperse. So that isn't just something for the audience. At least if we do it with the Sprinks point of view, the crowd follows him, but they're not necessarily singing.
Yeah, there's
But
gossiping behind him. Yeah.
Yeah, I
still
saw his
grounds
gossip
it.
talking behind his back.
In events that are actually happening, people are all talking around him, following him down the street, and that is odd, even if we don't take it at the musical angle.
Oh, it is odd, but this is a very odd London where half the townsfolk are farm animals.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's exactly indicative of having a bunch of strangers follow you to your place of work. Not really an excuse for that.
For instance, did you count how many strangers actually followed him from like earlier on, or just the ones in that kind of square outside his office?
I didn't check the faces of any connecting tissue. I don't know if one of the first characters introduced was at the final spot at his work. I didn't do that.
Okay. Could it also be played off of as a feeling of like weight onto Scrooge, like all these voices just getting closer and more onto him? Like when he turned, like everyone's looking at him because he acknowledged them, which is making them awkward to spread out. But do you think it could be played off of like that?
I mean, if this was more of like a psychological film where it's kind of through the eyes of the main character and how they perceive the world, but in this, it's not. They don't really do that.
It's more direct. Yeah.
Funny enough, I was gonna say I think I would classify the Christmas Carol story as a psychological film, but I don't. This one again.
Well, once the ghosts are introduced, sure.
Yeah, but
here, no.
Yeah. So once again, like I said, if we have less to work with in this Scrooge, in terms of like being what Scrooge directly does.
I guess kind of a piggyback question off of that, slightly different. This isn't asking for the best or worst of the music, but is there any song in this movie you would consider doesn't add anything to the story?
There was. Where did I write that in my? Yes, the Cratchit song, the little Tiny Tim song. I just wrote in parentheses "waste of time."
With him walking up to the house.
No. After all,
at the table in the present.
Yeah, the Cratchit family song. I wrote "waste of time" in parentheses in my notes for. So I would say that one.
Okay. And that's the only one you would consider?
I mean, I would cut the last one if we had to cut the already cut song.
Great at it. Okay, cool.
But if we had the cut song, I'd keep it. So there's my stipulation for that.
Okay. Ryder, did you see any song? Especially with how they're written and the portrayals of the words being used, did you see any that were not needed?
Funny enough,
Because I would presume you can see that stronger than Crimson or I.
yeah. Funny enough, in terms of what it adds to the story, I would pick the same one, and have the same stipulation. And the reason is, because we already got a firm sense of what their dynamic is at the dinner table and how and all their back and forths. So it doesn't really add much to the story itself. That's the one that would be repeated information. Granted, I also say I do like it for the I guess the emotional immersion in the scene, but if I were to pick one to be cut, I would probably pick that one.
Okay.
Springs.
I'll have to think about it.
Not to be so cryptic, but I think I'm in agreement that if one was cut for the use of need, it would be Tiny Tim's song, because it is kind of reiterating what's already been said with Tiny Tim. I do, however, like it in the movie, and I lean more to keep it than cut it overall, because I love, this is jumping the act, but I love the cut of the shot that goes back to show Scrooge listening and how subtle Michael Caine's acting is to how the words are affecting him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. I love every single cutaway in between our songs that we get to Michael Caine acting. It's carrying the character of Scrooge in this film.
Cool. All right. I think that was Crimson's pitch at the very beginning. Again, another thing where it started. Did this answer the question? Or I guess
Springs, I don't think you've made one. Go ahead.
Well, not a thing, but I just to answer like the question for yourself, what did you see the songs as throughout your first time? Did you see them as discussion points? Did you see them as actually singing in world?
I saw them as grounded in world because of my opening example of the crowd being acknowledged by Scrooge. And like I said, Act 2, I'll also point something out.
Okay, cool. All right, let me go to something. Something probably only I caught, which is at where is it in my notes? 304, when we're in the square and we're looking, and there's a guy sitting next to, I think, a chicken, and a dog's looking out the window and throws a snowball, I think. Did either of you recognize that dog?
No.
Okay, figured not. That's Sprocket from Fraggle Rock.
Yeah, I haven't seen Fraggle Rock.
Oh.
No, I haven't either.
I guess in history we could have brought up a little of like, how big of fans are you of Jim Henson works?
Well, I mean,
I
if you
would
want to
say
do that
I
now,
am
we
a
can
fan.
do that.
But yeah, I'd say I am a fan, but I have not seen every work, and I do not necessarily love every single work I've seen.
All right, I've seen a good chunk of Dinosaurs. I have not seen every episode because I had it on VHS. And I've seen Muppets Treasure Island. And I think I've seen a snippet of Muppets movie. But I think that is pretty much all my Muppet stuff.
Let's see. I've seen a couple movies, or I've seen a special here and there from the Muppets and stuff like that. Did you do the Sesame Street? Am I thinking about something wrong?
He did.
Okay, yeah. So I've seen the Sesame Street.
I saw some Sesame Street.
Yeah. Either two of you seen Labyrinth or Dark Crystal?
No.
Labyrinth is in like the
Not Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, like David Bowie.
That's
Labyrinth.
the one with David Bowie.
Yeah. Yes, I've seen that. That was Jimmy Henson.
Yep, that was Jim Henson.
Okay, then I think I've seen more than his stuff I thought, because I was gonna make a joke saying Jimmy Henson who. Okay, yeah, then I've seen some of his stuff. I definitely haven't seen all of it. I've seen the odd like Muppet special, and I grew up on Sesame Street and Labyrinth. I've seen Labyrinth, so.
Gotcha. I'm not sure if he was connected at all in the puppeteering in Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers that we covered. Unsure.
No clue. It wasn't mentioned in facts that I can recall. Yeah.
All right, cool.
I will jump to one of my favorite little bits. Is Fred just straight up fucking with his Uncle Scrooge, and he's the one that invites the charity people inside.
Yeah, this Fred is so charismatic.
Yeah, he's not gonna let his uncle get him down, like, at all.
No. Compared to the 80s one, this is a completely different Fred.
Yep. I'm in agreement with that. And I am going to note this here. Fred in the scene as he leaves is wearing a top hat and a red scarf, and wearing a very, very similar outfit to somebody at the end of the movie.
Glad you caught it. Did you also catch that everything is so dark and dim in the office, and Fred comes in with color, like a spot of color, to really focus more of light onto him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They play with color a lot in this movie. Don't worry, I'll avoid color theory for Crimson's sanity. But
I guess a minor one that I'm sure even Crimson caught up is how everything's dark and grim in Scrooge and Marley's office, and the brightest thing you have is Bob Cratchit being Kermit the Frog as a bright green.
He is a bright green. Yeah.
It does contrast well, yes.
Well, I mean, something that's different about this Bob, some of the ones we saw earlier, is this is the most subdued Bob. We talked about previous Bob, the 80s one, how subdued he was. This Bob's even more.
I would disagree with that, actually.
Okay. How come?
Because this Bob is still willing to have fun.
That's true. This Bob also stands up
actually,
against Ebenezer, whereas the other one kind of just accepts things.
Let me rephrase that. We see this Bob have fun directly. I would be difficult to see the 80s George C. Scott version of Bob like still skating around and having fun. They would have to.
I still think there was a chance if Tiny Tim wasn't there.
Yeah, like I said, possibly we would have to see a different version of that Bob. I'm still leaning no with that one, but this one I think is still whimsical. He's subdued again, but he still has that whimsy to him that I think the 35 version of him had.
Yeah, wow. To the 35 one?
No, not directly. I said there's a bit of that in here.
Okay.
The fact that this Bob is willing to have more fun, or was willing to have fun, because he's singing with his son as he's walking home. There's a lot of little notes of whimsy and fun to this Bob, even though he is subdued.
No, I think I agree with the writer. The 35 one, I think, is the most jolliest of the three.
Certainly.
All right, let's go to. Was that point brought up by you, writer?
No, I brought up the.
You brought up the Fred thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Crimson then.
All right. So, kind of goes back to the musical thing, the town following him. In this, because it wasn't really an issue in the other two we've covered, it is well established that everyone in the town knows of Scrooge and knows he is a Scrooge. So I'm curious why the charity guys came over and why they were surprised by Scrooge being a Scrooge. Everybody knows who Scrooge is.
The best faith interpretation that I could pull out, and this is me reading into the story, is they're just not locals. They just happen to be in town to just do the donation stuff.
Possibly.
Don't get anything for that though.
Exactly. Like
I could see it in constant hope and change of heart. Hence why they linger for that scene after Fred leaves.
They're shocked by his lack of care for charity. It's like they've never heard of this man before. I wouldn't ascribe hope to it.
I think they would come in at Fred's invitation, and just because Fred talks his uncle up, so that would have excited them. I do think there is a change. There is a point that they would have realized that it's still the same Scrooge. And obviously, this relies on them showing up in the first place, as you point out, Crimson, which is
that's what I was going to
say.
Issue. Yeah.
So I think if they were there and Fred is the one to invite them in, I still think they would have the scene would have played out as normal, but getting them to the front door because everybody knows who this Scrooge is
I think it also helps play off the tone of this. I think it also helps play off the tone of the story being told in this instance of the scene where Fred is so uplifting and upbeat, and they're interacted through Fred, and Fred makes a donation, and the connection of Scrooge to Fred is kind of maybe a hopeful of like a change in Scrooge after a visit with his nephew, and how Scrooge treats him of like the poorhouses and the prisons and the surplus population is such a shift in tone of a character, not of Scrooge, but of a comparison of the two in the interaction that Honeydew and Beaker have seen, that I think gets a stronger reaction out of the two of them.
Sure, once they're there, yeah, I mean, I agree with all that sentiment, but it still comes to the point I'm making of they wouldn't have been there in the first place because everyone knows who Scrooge is.
I labeled it down as just a plot convenience, so it's a problem. Can't really ignore that one for me.
Yeah, and I just saw it as still a chance to give Scrooge a chance. Because as we see, I mean, the story of this all happens in one night of how much something can change someone over thought. And if they haven't visited Scrooge for a donation in a year, a lot could happen in a year.
Well, that's implying that they met him last year.
That's true, or implying this is their first time. So maybe they just know the rumors and gossip, and they have never met Scrooge in person.
Yeah. See, for me, that's just we're doing too much writing work for them, so that's why I'm leaning towards it. I'm just going to label it as the plot convenience that it is. So, like I said, I think we're in agreement, Springs. Like once they're there, I think they would come inside because of Fred. Fred invited them in, and I think at this point Fred is very happy-go-lucky, and he even donates to them as he leaves. So I very much think the scene plays out of normal once they're there, but it's getting them there that is I guess would be the convenience of the plot right there.
I guess.
Yeah, this is my favorite iteration of the charity people in the intro. I do like Fred being involved with them, donating and stuff. This is my favorite version of them thus far. But yeah, just them being there in the first place.
That's an interesting question, and I actually think I agree.
Oh, I do agree with that. I do like it. It just brings up a question for me. How did you two feel, I guess, being familiar with the Muppets, the iteration of who is who casted in this movie?
Well, with my experience being very minimal, they were fine, I guess. I mean, Fozzie was kind of with an upbeat character, fits the name of the character. Miss Piggy and Froggy being in a relationship makes sense. Did I say Froggy?
You did.
You sure did. That's a children's book.
Froggy! You're right. Kermit.
Don't worry, I call him Kermit Bob throughout my notes, so
that works.
Makes sense. Was it Binkard or Binky? Whatever one of these charity guys are. The one of the charity guys here. It's like
Beaker,
whatever. I told you my lack of knowledge.
I
don't know either of their characters really, so sure they fit. I guess I don't know.
Gods of the Great, Charles Dickens.
No, actually, since you bring it up, least favorite part of this movie.
Ooh.
I'm sure we'll pick more into that.
Yeah, I like their
interesting.
I like their comedy, But I agree, the narration can be a bit much sometimes.
Interesting.
To answer your question, Springs, I don't know Muppets enough to answer the questions.
Oh,
I are the only ones who I think I was certain fit the roles because from what little I remembered ever before I watched it was Bobby and Miss Piggy. Bobby, God damn it, Kermit and Miss Piggy as Bob and Emily.
gotcha.
Those are the only two that I guess I had a vision for going into the film. And yeah.
Yeah, I think they all fit fairly well. Um, the only one that's like a
Marley's kind of.
yeah, the Marley one is the one I think at the bottom of the list because it's a creative liberty change to incorporate both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes sense of their characters to be the greedy connection.
Yeah.
I don't know any other Muppet that it could be. It could be oh, I'm blanking on his name. He's got a lot of whiskers and pitch black eyes.
Doesn't even
Neither one of
ring a
you would
bell.
know.
No. But didn't even tickle anything in my brain, sadly.
That's. I don't know. You're saying they fit because they're kind of greedy in the Muppets universe, but in this, they stood out as being weird personality wise. I cannot see this version of Scrooge working with them as colleagues. I think they're too upbeat and energetic for this Scrooge.
Honestly, yes. Now that you bring it up, it might be to the film's benefit that we don't see them interact all that much, even in the flashback stuff.
Yeah. I just looked up the Muppet I was looking for was Uncle Deadly. I think if he was Jacob Marley.
Yeah, because that was something I wrote down. Was just they don't seem compatible with Scrooge.
They seem too humorous to be with this Scrooge.
Yeah.
I don't know if this Scrooge would keep up with two Marley brothers constantly joking.
I agree.
This is definitely a version of where it works, but it's not like would not have been my first choice, I guess.
Does it help that it never? Reddy, you brought up that they're not in flashbacks, and that strengthens it. Is it good that we never see like a first interaction of how they came to be?
I think that actually does help the film in a way because of how incongruent and seemingly incompatible that the character as it stands that we have for this Scrooge would not be like putting up with them because this one is yeah. So I think
their characteristics, no, their personalities don't match, but their characteristics do.
Yeah. So in a way that like less is more in this case because I think if we saw the interaction, it would have exaggerated the problem that it would introduce, that they would be incompatible.
Yeah, and I think it would need more screen time to show the character change in Scrooge to where he is now from that.
Yeah.
Rather than a jump to not answer it. I think it would be very hard to craft that.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of those instances where without it, it actually is better.
I'll take us to I like that Kermit Bob is like the go-between for all the other workers and Scrooge. Like all the other workers are too terrified to talk to him.
Yeah.
I think it's a good gag. And also I think if you're going to give Scrooge more than just one employee, this is the best way to do it because it's still giving Kermit Bob the center focus because of how integral Bob is to the story of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, and also with the runtime, also how much he's looked up to, which being this more subtle, as Crimson put it, a subtle Bob Cratchit. So the rat employees build up his character more.
Yeah, like why they trust him to speak on their behalf, even though they're funny when they're denying that it's like, oh, it's all his idea in the background. They're just kind of talking like the nonsensical stuff behind him.
I know it's a movie moment gag of Scrooge yelling unemployed, and then they're all in the luau outfits because
Yeah,
the
it's like,
luau outfits just appear, but it's pretty darn funny.
yeah, and it works. Like I said, I love the gag. It's still, again, movie moment. The gag worked for me. Didn't really laugh out loud, but I smirked.
Now, Crimson, did you find that humorous or did you find it eye rolling?
Neither. I was pretty neutral on it.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's an error or something, but I caught it at a minute 33, like right at the beginning when it's giving the opening credits and it's going over the town. There's a church or a building clock off to the left, and we see two faces of the clock. They don't match.
Well, I would say that's an error then.
Yeah.
Good catch.
I guess this is during this act. Crimson, since you think this Bob is more subdued, what did you think of all the ice skating stuff then that this Bob does?
I saw that as kind of an outlier to his character as a whole, because every other scene he's in, either with the bookkeepers or at his own house, he's just your normal guy. But this ice skating thing really stands out as like the 35 Bob. So I kind of saw it incongruent with his character throughout the rest of this. So that's how I saw it.
So you saw it as something that was out of character, almost then.
To a degree, yeah.
So did you see the, as it's called, the Christmas scat little ditty he has with Tiny Tim on his shoulder? Was that in or out of character then?
I'd say that one's a bit more within his character because that's with his son. But the fact that he's not this joyful, jovial, sided anywhere else just kind of pops the ice skating one in particular out to me.
I think I was okay with it because he's still with all his coworkers. You know?
Yeah.
The reason, I guess, so, how best to describe this? It had the feeling of you had a long work day, you and the boys go grab a drink at the bar on your way home, kind of thing, kind of feeling. And then you as a group spotted something fun to do, and you all decided to just do that like very briefly, and then you all went home. That's kind of the vibe I got, and I guess that's why I was okay with it. I don't, like I said, I don't see it as an out of character, and why I just took it as this Bob has a bit more whimsy to him. And for me, I saw the Tiny Tim scat song, as Springs put it, as well as just another addition onto it.
I think I'm inclined with Ryder of what he's saying. It does not. I see the 35 Bob Cratchit we saw have more kid at heart joy, which is why he joins in the ice skating with the kids. And this one's more I guess, the joy of Christmas Eve or the time of Christmas, and he's with employees to do it because he doesn't instantly go in and do it. He watches for a bit and then goes and joins.
Well, he's excited that the Penguins are doing, I forgot what they called it, but the Penguin thing.
The ice skating, yeah.
It makes it sound like it's a local show. I guess, it worked for me. I don't see it as a character, so I guess there's that. Just wanted your thoughts on it to expand on it more as well.
Yeah. I have another question similar to the song one. Is Gonzo and Rizzo in world? And I think this one's a very important one to answer.
It is. I think this is my biggest objective problem with the movie. Is Gonzo and Rizzo.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Crimson. No matter the way you answer, it's inconsistent.
Oh, that's also true.
Yeah. The Merry Christmas at the end when they're physically touched and acknowledged is the big inconsistency of like either or.
Well, I mean, like they interact with the physical world all the time. Like they use a grapple to go with Scrooge in the next act, and
they do, but he doesn't acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's that stuff that would be weird because obviously he should acknowledge that or just try to shake something off.
That's true unless they're not real and he can't see them. which plays off seeing the movie that way, like they're always around and always like in the past and all these things as the narrators, and Scrooge never acknowledged them. Totally fine until that acknowledgement at the end. To me, that acknowledgement at the end went, oh, they were a physical presence around Scrooge, and he completely ignored them the whole time.
Yeah.
That's a weird issue.
Yeah, and if they, even if they weren't real, the fact that they are shown to go with them when they're traveling to the past. I have no idea how they end up in certain other places.
Yeah,
they're absolutely omniscient. I don't I there's no consistent for me. Either way you answer the question would be they're inconsistent some way somehow. So
Because even if you took the angle of like, oh, it's just like Gonzo reading the book to Rizzo, it just brings up a bunch of weird things. Like, why would Rizzo bring up, how do you know this when you're not in there? Because then they're not just reading a book, it's actually as if they're in the story. So, yeah, I think it's just botched. Completely botched.
Rizzo at one point even calls Gonzo a god.
I'm surprised he said omniscient in this movie. I'm like, kids know what that word means?
they do now.
Yeah, it's culture.
Look, I mean, to harp away on the Disney CEO since you just gave me the opening. I am absolutely for using big words like that and treat kids like they're people, because kids are capable of great emotion. So I view them taking out the deleted scene as a problem on their part, because that's just not trusting your audience.
Yeah, well, when we get there, it's the use of that song is so strong. Me.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. It's true.
There's again, doubt the two of you know. There's a cameo. There's a couple Muppet cameos in this movie that don't necessarily have roles, but the character's there. I don't know if that's just to incorporate like, oh, more Muppets, or we couldn't find a role in the Charles Dickens book Christmas Carol to adapt them to. So the first one's like New Zealand with his boomerang fish as just like a market salesman.
I mean, I assume so, in the sense of like they don't necessarily need to fill all the characters out as specific Muppets. They just want to kind of fill out the world to make it feel as naturally populated as possible between Muppets and humans, trying to make it feel like the ratio is completely normal. And obviously, you work with puppet frogs for a living.
I guess I'll say it out front because I'll probably bring it up at the summary at the very end. I think the costuming in this movie is great, both for live action actors and the Muppets.
I agree. I think they did a good job. Even the set designs are good. I like that they actually either made or used real old books in the store.
In the office.
Office, yeah. The old books that used to have edge printing on them. They look like authentic old books. I'm curious if they actually like bought some for it.
Possibly. The attention to detail is good. However, in Act 2, when we get there, there's a really funny thing I noticed. And I think I've noticed it before, but once you know it, it's very funny to watch. It's not necessarily an error, but it's funny. Even though they are a problem of Gonzo and Rizzo, I enjoy them in this story of Muppets of Christmas Carol because it's very funny going in the order we're going with. How in 35 there wasn't a Charles Dickens presence or narrator of sorts, and then Fred in the 80s version had a beginning and end narration from the book, and this one has a off and on narration, which is lines pretty much. They're real close. They're not a one-to-one, but they're very close, straight writings from the book through the use of Gonzo, and I think it's.
What are you talking about? Charles Dickens is actually in the movie.
That's true. Yeah, sorry. Charles Dickens is in the movie. And I like it because I think it plays a little more to the faithful description of a book to describe what's happening to a character or scene
The closest
versus kind of glancing over it.
the closest equivalent I can think of to something that we've covered is Princess Bride.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Where
When the grandpa loses his place with
Is this the kissing
shrieking
part?
eels,
Yeah.
and he goes, "Grandpa, you already said that." Oh, you're right. And as he's speaking, he's using his voice over the characters' voices. Yeah,
good stuff. I think I don't know if I buy into that too much. It has a nice feeling to it, but I don't necessarily need it, if that makes sense. Because comparatively, it would be very weird to have J.R.R. Tolkien walking around in Lord of the Rings, you know.
it would. But if a
So
Muppet version was done of it, I think it needs that kind of
it needs that whimsical,
abstract.
abridged feel.
Yeah,
Because here's okay. This feels, and I do this as a comment. This feels like an abridged version of the Muppets Christmas Carol, while still retaining all the character traits of like a majority of the character traits responsible for each character. Because there's a lot of abridged versions of shows that come out that like animated shows that come out that don't necessarily rework the characters, but they just make their what's going on more funny and more whimsical.
true. And do you think the counterbalance to that in this version with the actual lines from the book over the jokes added isn't a good mix?
I think they counterbalance each other. Is what I'm feeling with that. Like I said. So what I meant to is that like I don't want to say. I think it was the word that you use of it being a feeling of open faithfulness to the book. I think is what you said, and I don't know if I necessarily want to commit to that as making this an objectively good choice. I do think that's
Okay.
I do think that's a it's a again that comes out to feeling, and I tend to separate that out for my objectivity as much as possible. So that just might be my version of objective, but it's one of those things where like it can be done well if it's done well. Like I said, that's why I did said the Princess Bride citation. I think it's done brilliantly with that, and I think it's done fairly well here as well. I'm just not sure I would want to commit to that. In the choice of doing that makes it inherently good. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can see what you're saying.
Okay.
I do like, though, that they're incorporated with the movie, and unlike Princess Bride, it doesn't take you out of the story being told. Even though Princess Bride has a charm to it because it begins the story knowing that.
Yeah.
Of what it's telling. Where this one, it's not like there is no cutaway to like Rizzo and Gonzo around a fire reading a story.
Yeah, like they're telling us the story as we go along with them.
Yes, while we can visually see the story happening.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I guess that's all. That's my bit on it. I guess so.
Yeah. Crimson, let's go to you.
All right. Potentially a little character nick for Scrooge. We see that there's a guy who's behind on his payments. Applegate. He's behind, and what Scrooge does is physical assault, and nobody cares about that. But that's not the character thing. He didn't try to get his money out of him or anything. He just threw him to the side. It's not like the 35 Scrooge where he's like going to close down his house or whatever to get his money back. Or is that 35? Whatever. Whichever previous iteration.
Is this the person that's getting evicted in the very beginning?
Yeah, Applegate. He doesn't say a word to him.
Yeah, he just picks him up and chucks him outside. He doesn't try to get money. He doesn't berate him like, well, tough luck. I'll get my money from selling your property, and then throws him out.
Yeah.
There's nothing, and I feel like Scrooge would say something regarding money.
I can see that as a nick, but I think it plays more into this is an angry Scrooge and not a greedy Scrooge.
The reason this is still a greedy Scrooge. That's the whole reason Belle left him, was he was focused on money. I don't want to say he's not a greedy Scrooge, because he absolutely is. So I do see that as a nick in him.
Okay.
Yes.
Because he talks to Bob directly, like, who is this? And Bob gives the explanation, and the explanation is all Scrooge needs to throw him out. So it's not like an instant stranger danger kind of thing of Scrooge. It's an explanation given, and that's what caused him to do the action.
Mhm.
But then again, we don't know about Applegate. It just plays into Scrooge's character more.
So, I was going to say, even in my best faith interpretation of it, I think it would still introduce a different problem that Scrooge doesn't recognize him. I think, I'm willing to label it down as a Nick. I feel like the best is he knows if he knows who Applegate is or Applewood is, then he wouldn't have asked Bob, to give him the information, if that makes sense. So in your scenario, Springs, of why he just got the explanation and immediately threw him out, that implies he knows who he is and doesn't need to speak to him anymore, so he throws him out. But if that were the case, he would have recognized him and not need to answer the question.
No. I see it as he asks Bob Cratchit, who is this? Applegate doesn't answer. Scrooge, or Bob does.
Yeah.
And upon Bob's answer is what causes Scrooge to do the action of throwing him out.
Yeah. That doesn't.
If he recognized Applegate, I think there would be more of a conversation back and forth without Bob needed to be at all.
Right. But because he doesn't know Applegate, that's what highlights Crimson's problem as to there should have been a conversation. So, okay. My issue with the scene is also subtle Nick with the character, because there's a Nick in either scenario. In Crimson's scenario, the Nick comes into Scrooge's character because he's not having a conversation. And if in your scenario the Nick comes in terms of in Scrooge's character, just for the lack of knowledge, because what you're saying is Bob Cratchit's explanation is enough reason for Scrooge to throw him out, which means that it's the knowledge of him is enough to throw him out. Therefore, Scrooge actually knows who he is, because there's an escalation problem there then.
Yes. Even if Bob just reminded him of who it is. Yeah. I guess the hard question is, when Applegate is defending himself and he's going on a spiel, is Scrooge listening to that at all? Because Scrooge doesn't immediately toss him out. Scrooge goes and puts his stuff down, like takes off his hat.
Oh yeah, he's probably listening, but he doesn't care about the excuses.
Okay. Because that's another thing into it. I'm like, is the excuse of what Applegate's saying causing him to be thrown out? More so than Bob just giving a definition.
It's probably more reason, I think.
Okay.
Do you want to expand on your point, Crimson? Because we kind of took the conversation away from your point.
No, I feel like we've expanded on it. And my point still stands, where I just think...
I can see the Nick.
Yeah.
A detail I do like, however, in that whole scene is when it goes to the window, you can see Gonzo and Rizzo looking through it. And they didn't disappear.
Yeah, in the background.
There's a lot of funny little cuts, like when he's using Rizzo to blow up the fire, or to kind of keep the fire going.
Using him as bellows.
Yeah. Little funny shit like that.
And then this isn't the first instance of a physical harm to someone. He also throws Fred's wreath at the caroler.
Yeah, it's direction. All right, I'll bring up an issue that's most likely in every Muppets thing. Like I said, quite limited. I barely remember the Treasure Island one, or whatever it was called. Is that there's living fruit and vegetables, and some animals are okay to eat while others aren't. I just wrote, who the heck was the goose, and why did they deserve to die?
Good question.
And then we find out later that vegetables can also be sentient and talk and sing. And,
some can.
Rizzo even references not eating the talking. So, okay.
I said never eat a talking vegetable or something like that.
Never eat singing fruit or something.
Yeah. So I just
Yes.
find that as an odd world thing.
I agree. It is an odd world thing, but it's not all. It's a mix. For example, like the fruits and vegetables, when in Act Two, jumping that little, when Christmas present arrives, there's a banquet of food, and that's actual food. That's not Muppet food. And then the beginning of Scrooge after the song, when everyone's like dispersing after he turns around, there's a man who has, I think, 2 sheep with him, but they're not Muppets. They're 2 live animals. So I think the goose at the end could have been a live animal and not a Muppet. So I think the live things can be eaten fine, but the Muppet animals or sentience can't. Maybe. But the Swedish chef also unveils the food as if like to be eaten.
Yeah, in the opening there was a turkey getting stuffed back into the food cart because it was trying to
Yeah.
escape. So, yeah, I think they're just, it's like Disney, where like, what's the difference between Pluto and Goofy? They're both dogs. Kind of the same kind of thing, where there's inconsistency on the creatures in the world.
Maybe just a little more grim than we thought.
I think my last point for this act is once again Scrooge going up the stairs. Really, really love the shadows.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
Yeah.
Holy
But the
crud,
candle
I've
is
talked about the shadow problems in the last 2 movies.
Yeah.
Oh,
My issue with this one is the candle's fake for this one though. Other than that, though, it does achieve a good effect. It's just obviously a fake candle while he's going up the stairs. But again, love the shadows. Thumbs up.
this to me is the best candlelight scene in the 3 films we've covered of Christmas Carol. It's still not 100% accurate because when he lights the candle to begin with, it is pitch black, which I think is great. But when he lights it, it does emit some light, but very faintly in the top left, you can see a light has turned on artificially. But the light
I
he
just
is
don't know
using
what
on
you
the
want.
stairs. I want natural lighting of a candle.
Okay, that's what happened in the '80s one, and you said that sucked because it was
There's
too
no
dark
use for
and
the candle.
because
All
it's a
those
real
windows were open.
candle.
The lighting wouldn't have changed at all if that candle wasn't used in the 80s. The designer of the set needed to keep those windows down, but then probably for the 80s, it was too dark with just the candlelight. So they're like, how do we do it? We'll just keep it up so the candle can be used like the book. That's probably how they went about it. This one is a very pitch black stairwell, which has some use of artificial lighting, so it's not 100%, but it's way more accurate of the lighting off of Scrooge's face going up the stairs.
Isn't that still technically artificial lighting though? Because it's not a real candle.
Yes.
Yes, I guess I never saw it as a fake candle.
The reason you can tell it's a fake candle is because it's not twitching. The light is completely steady the entire time, which you achieve your desired effect for sure. But
Oh, good point. Good point. It is
even
artificial lighting.
yeah, if he has his even if you have your hand over the candle, the fucking flame is still going to flicker.
Yeah,
So you definitely
you're very right.
It definitely achieves the desired effect, but it's still technically artificial lighting.
You are very, very right. All right, that helped lower it. It's all artificial. I guess the 80s one is the only one that's not artificial, but still the lighting isn't needed. Or it's a lighting problem. They all have a lighting problem. But I think this one looks the best. I think that's where I go on it.
All right. As I said, that's all I got for this act. Everything else kind of plays out as normal. Though I do find it funny that he beats he beats his fucking best dressing gown that he hung up and forgot about it, I guess.
Yeah, which is what happens in the 35 version. And that was missed in the 80s.
That was his, I think, worst acting in this. Michael Caine's was the curtain thing, because
It's my best gown.
he reacted to the curtain before he turned to look at the curtain. He did the while turning to it. He didn't see it yet.
It's good.
So,
I think it's good acting. He just
Uh,
mistimed it. If that makes sense, that's how I would describe it. But yeah,
I
but I guess I agree.
don't know if I fully believe or
that's,
agree
I
with
mean,
you.
I saw it, I wrote it.
Yes, I think it could have been the corner of his eye. Something startled him. I think I need to play back that scene slowly to see, because I think it works still. It doesn't have to be a direct shot. It could be he's still spooked after the doorknob of Marley, or the door knocker of Marley. It'd still work.
I mean, do you remember distinctly? Or are you just saying that in good faith?
I'm just saying that.
Okay.
Talk amongst
Just
yourself. I'll
gauging the
look.
level. That's fine. The door knocker Marley, I think, is the best one we've seen so far.
It's freaking the scariest. This is the scariest one. The music is so unnerving.
I mean, you even get a Dutch angle in there when he approaches the door.
You get a Dutch angle on his first appearance of the character, which is a slight lighting thing for me because as soon as he enters, it all goes dark. But it does help play off the character of being very cold. So it does get a lot more blue lighting.
I guess on the topic of the Marleys, I like their depiction. The chains are cool. They kind of spawn chains because their introduction there wasn't that many, and by the end there was a whole lot to go with the songs they were singing.
Yeah, and obviously you can tell which
Sometimes,
ones are real and which ones are fake too. But
yeah, sometimes they're transparent, sometimes they're not. So there are some inconsistencies, but as a visual, I quite like it. This one we learn the most about Marley or Marleys in this instance of actually what he did in his life or their life in this instance, why they were bad. The others we didn't really get that other than I was a greedy man like you, Scrooge, stuff like that. We actually get more detail here, so that's nice.
I like that their wailing, like the 80s version, is incorporated into their song.
Mhm.
I really like that. Also, this one, it doesn't fly out a window. These two get dragged back down to hell.
Yeah.
Or is how I interpreted it as.
And this one has the same issue that I've had on the others and will probably be in every iteration of why does Scrooge get the ghosts and the Marleys don't. This one didn't fix that issue, so
No.
bring it up as a point that it's still a thing, but we don't have to go in deep like we did in the others.
Well, is this one a little more of a nick to you? Because supposedly, well, actually, this might be a little better. We don't see how the Marleys died. It's just Charles Dickens saying the Marleys were dead to begin with, but we don't know if they died at the same time.
Yeah, we don't know anything about their deaths. We don't know if they were assassinated because they were horrible people.
Ooh.
Or they could have died like a week apart, or who knows? We don't know.
The age of the Tin Man reached out of the world of Oz.
Yeah.
It was.
I think that's my Act 1 stuff. Continue.
Oh, very interesting. Because I have like 2 whole pages of notes on Act. Let's see here. Anything we haven't gone over yet? Oh, I did pull up or just looked at the thing you said, Crimson, of Scrooge getting spooked. I don't see what you see. I think it's the corner of his eye what scared him. He's already spooked to begin with.
All right.
Oh, I did watch this with subtitles on for this watch to check just like dialogue to help. There is Scrooge replying to when Fred enters his office, and Fred says, "A Merry Christmas, Uncle," and Scrooge replies with a Merry Christmas as a greeting, but then afterwards spits out humbug. And I saw that as without subtitles. I could see that as like relisting Fred's words of Merry Christmas and spitting on it as a hatred towards Christmas. But with the subtitles, I saw that the Merry Christmas didn't have a question mark at the end of it after what Fred said, but more of a greeting of just the word itself. So I saw that as a slight already change to Scrooge's character towards his nephew.
I didn't necessarily follow that because it seemed kind of obvious to me, not respecting the Christmas greeting from him.
For me, I took it as he doesn't like Christmas, but he's respectful with his nephew. So, like, he said Merry Christmas back to his nephew because he knows his nephew likes Christmas. And then he just hoped that would be the end of it, kind of.
I mean, he said humbug.
Well, that's still
Exactly.
he did.
But that was more to himself, right? Not really at his nephew.
Yeah, because he looks back down at his notes when he says humbug.
Yeah. So.
Interesting. I like that. I guess it could be interpreted different ways. The respect onto the nephew, but even giving the respect to his nephew is saying a difference in this Scrooge compared to the other ones. Because the other two, I think, just said humbug upon being greeted with Merry Christmas.
For me, I do think there is some, with what little interaction there is between this Scrooge and his nephew, I do think there's actually some love there because this nephew feels free to fuck with him a little bit.
Yeah.
And like he's doing it in a way that he knows he's not going to get much in trouble for, either. Like he knows that they have something in their relationship that akin to love, at least. Might not be like.
I guess reason why Fred even came to visit.
Yeah.
When Fred leaves, and says bye to Bob and a Merry Christmas, I like that there's a slower rendition in the background playing of Scrooge's song, the first one that's played, to show a center point of Scrooge's emotions onto Fred. I don't know if either of you two caught that.
I guess I didn't.
Okay.
No, I don't think I caught it, but I can sort of see it in my head.
Okay, so I thought that was really good. When the caroler Rabbit comes up to the door, he asks Penny for the song governor. So there is again another instance of Penny being used. So I don't know if that's just another error of the currency difference we brought up in the 80s version, or if a penny is an actual currency of the time.
This is
Not
still
an
Not
set
an
in
American
Britain-
penny,
this is still
but
set in Britain.
this is still in London
London.
Yeah,
so
and-
it's
of
the same problem.
1843. Okay.
I mean, I even looked up when jelly beans were made for this.
Oh, well. Does that match up?
1861 would be the answer.
Ooh, does
So-
that line up?
I think there was there was a timeline thing notes that I don't remember what it was toward. I know they said something that they implied they were in the 19th century or they were in the 1900s at some point in a line of dialogue earlier in the film, and that kind of gets rescinded or something, or later on with the present, I think, saying his like I have 1800 brothers or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Well, actually, both
past
spirits say it.
says, I remember nearly 1900 years. So that would still be 18 whatever.
Yeah. And then present says the siblings.
So one works down from 1900, the other one works up from 1800.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I was just making sure because I didn't go back to try to find the specific line.
Well, I mean, I think the one you're referring to is at the Fozzie's party. Someone says 19th century.
Well, that's 18th. Yeah, I know 19th century is always like it refers to the 18th century, but
Yeah.
the 1800s. So that one I was fine with. I knew there was there was a line of there. I know there was a line of dialogue here that confused me on the timeline, but if you guys didn't feel confused by it, I'll just accept it because I didn't go back to look for it.
No, I think this is 1843 of the story of Christmas Carol. It's just never stated directly that this is 1843.
Well, I
That's how
mean,
I took it.
Gonzo's directly referencing the book, so the events would be of the book.
That's true. It's just the dates never said. I'll just go through my notes since it seems the two of you are out for Act 1. I like that when Bob and the employees leave the office, even though it's nighttime, the town's coloring is more dimly saturated and darker to fit, which I think is good for the set to have a different coloring to it, which comes back later in the last act, which I think is real neat of a detail of dull greens and dark reds. I really like the shot of 2010 of Bob looking at the moon and the stars and the shooting star goes by.
Mhm.
I think it's framed very well. And I played it like 3 times to see if it's really that weird that in that shot he's the only one around. But it did line up with the angle that there could still be some penguins to his far right, but no one was in that section of the shot when he's going that direction towards the left after the ice skating.
It's always uncomfortable for me seeing Kermit standing,
Oh, seeing the ground?
seeing him walking. Yeah. Or in this case, just standing there, but full body.
Uncomfortable, you say?
Well, yeah, 'cause it doesn't look right.
I mean, that's fair, I guess.
I can see that, yeah. But I think the set design is very well done in this, of actually being at a point where it's designed for Muppeteering and the body height of a person matches in line with the Muppet for their height, and it's not like if it wasn't and someone had to kind of like lie on their back for the puppeteering and they're more up to like this person's torso. This one's more at the waist of like actual height.
Well, there is some discrepancy because obviously you got the human houses and you got the Muppet houses. Bob's house, Scrooge has to like duck in because he's tall. But in the depiction of the town, you don't really see any variation of tall house, small house. It's all pretty much the same architecture. But seeing Bob's house, we know that they do have smaller Muppet houses. So if they showcase more of the town having varying sizes of houses, that would be nice.
I saw that
The only
differently than you did.
the only thing I guess kind of different about it is the mouse house, which is just a hole in the wall. But all the others are normal doors, normal houses.
Interesting. So you saw the Cratchit's house more designed for Muppets.
Yeah, because
I
we
don't
have
think
to
I've
we
ever
see
pieced
that Scrooge has
Huh.
to duck to get in.
We do. I always saw it as it's just a poor place of town. So things are smaller.
So certainly a Muppet house because all the appliances are Muppet size, the tables, the height of a Muppet. It's a Muppet house.
But you're saying it was designed to be that. Like in world, like that house was built for the size of Muppets.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it makes sense. You wouldn't have a mouse live in a human house because they couldn't be able to actually live. They couldn't open a door. So there's varying creatures at different sizes in this world that you have to accommodate for their living. So yeah, that's the Muppet house.
Huh, okay. Crimson, I think you already brought up the Dutch angle of the Marley door knocker. Is that the one you were referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. I do really like that because the angle is lined up with the railing to be even with the frame. However, the background of Scrooge on the steps is Dutched.
Mm-hmm.
It also kind of makes him look like he's behind bars.
Yeah.
I like that it shows that Scrooge, I think it was touched on in the 80s version or something, like how greedy he is, but he doesn't share his wealth or doesn't like spend a lot. And I think it's really played well in the shot where he's eating the bread and cheese by the fire because he's in such a large room, yet he's huddled very close to the fire.
Well, even better example than that is the line "Darkness was cheap." I liked that because he's too cheap to even light up his house because it costs money for candle, wax, or oil, depending on whatever lighting instrument he's using. So I think that was a good line.
Yeah, and it also just plays more into how alone he is with the camera, like just how big everything in the chair he's in. So large, but he's small in a way.
Yeah, I think that's been on all three. How small he looks within his own house.
Yeah, they do a good job of framing that up, I think.
Yeah. Playing more into the fear, I like it's a lot of likes out of me. I like the editing of shots of the bell, the servant bell in here. It's definitely spooky, especially after the door knocker scene.
Mm-hmm.
Of the three the three zoom in shots on Scrooge to build fear and confusion. And it's not just like a slow pan in, it's a 1-to-1-to-1 with the music.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of the music, during the intro bit, he's walking to the beat of the music along with his cane, and I thought that was a nice detail.
Oh, yeah.
As well.
I think it adds to the fear that Charles Dickens and Rizzo isn't narrating what's to come, and it's more left in the darkness of what is going to occur. Because it's never said of Charles Dickens like he'll be visited by the Marleys.
No, he was kind of telling Rizzo he wants you want to see what's next type deal.
Yeah, but I think that adds into the tension of the scene of not knowing what's coming. Most newer audience members, not in your case, Crimson, of course, but
yes, there's people out here in the world who have not seen any Christmas carols or know anything of it. Yes.
I really like the line that I think Jacob Marley says, "Leave the comedy to the bears, Ebenezer." Pretty funny. Pretty in Muppet world joke, since Fozzie Bear is the comedian. I like the use of the music cutting out when the Marleys bring up the story of the spirits. Like it just goes silence for the explanation, which I think just builds onto the importance of what they're saying. Because after that, then they're saying, Marley, Marley, whoa, and getting dragged back to the music.
Mm-hmm.
And also a very clever is probably not the strongest word to use for it, but I think a decent transition usage of them leaving and it all goes dark and the fire comes back on.
I think that happened in the 80s version.
Did the 80s version go pitch black for a fade?
No, I think the fire flicked back on. That's what I mean. Sorry.
Oh, gotcha. When Nat Marley sat down outside the window. I think that's all I have for the sec then. Looking at it. I guess I can say now, I kept track of how many times Charles Dickens' costume changed throughout the movie. I take it both of you did notice.
No.
I noticed costume changes. I didn't.
There's a couple.
I didn't keep track.
I didn't see it as a pattern.
Okay, I figured neither of you kept track, but I'm sure you noticed that his costume was changing.
Yeah, it was not the same the whole time.
Okay. I'll let you know that his costume changed 5 times throughout the film. Which isn't a hefty amount, but still something. All right, anything else?
When does he have the time to do that when he's in the real world?
You couldn't tell you. Haven't a clue. Or how would he do it when he's not packing clothes with him through the past to go to different memories of the past, and yet he's now a lamplighter? Don't know.
Congratulations, you found a wardrobe issue.
I suppose so.
I'm putting it down in my negative category. There we go. All right. Ready for Act 2.
All right. Ryder, anything else of Act 1?
Nope.
All right, cool. On to Act 2, which goes all the way up to Christmas spirit taking Scrooge to the graveyard, pretty much. And let's start with Ryder.
I loved the funny lineup of all of the famous history writers. Ends with Charles Dickens in the line. Even though some of them are the busts. I enjoyed that particular shot because Charles Dickens is quite a revered writer for, I guess, the modern era. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, nice visual reference. The gag of the shelf breaking, not so great for me, but
No, I didn't enjoy that gag at all.
I think it went on a little too long of the humor of the shelf breaking, but it played into me the possibility that the shelf broke because it was acknowledged by the headmaster, but not necessarily that their existence is shown. Like, it could have just been that point at the time the shelf just broke.
It could be, but we're meant to take it as they broke the shelf.
Yeah, that their added weight is what caused it.
Yeah. So it's one, again, just inconsistency with Charles.
yeah. All right, I'll bring up a potential issue with Present that I had, and that was him dying at midnight. Why is it midnight? It's past 2:00 now.
Oh, you weren't quoting Shrek? Okay.
Interesting.
He appeared at 2:00 in the morning. So either he time traveled to the past or the future, and it wasn't the present.
Interesting.
Bringing it up for this one, that was a problem in the last one.
Yeah, he didn't disappear at midnight in the other one. Just he left because his time was up.
That is true. He just did leave. We didn't exactly know the exact time, though.
Yeah, it's
this
weird. It's weird
he said going away at midnight.
Yes. I see it as totally reasonably and fine.
Explain.
This is the Ghost of Christmas Present, and he time jumps with Scrooge outside the house of Christmas morning, and this is showing the whole existence he has of Christmas Day. So the 2 a.m. start is 2 hours after, quote-unquote, his birth of being existed, and he can only live up to the end of the day, which is at the stroke of midnight of Christmas Day.
This would make it the future then, because this doesn't happen. But that's what you're saying.
This is the events of Christmas Day. That's happened in all three versions we've seen.
Yeah, the difference is we actually have a time here.
You're saying all the events of what's happened with Present should be, like, paused in time?
We discussed before whether or not time moved, if it was a dream.
Well, it all happens in one night. The 80s one was the one that I pitched out when he was returned home after Yet to Come. It's still nighttime. It's not morning, which happened in the 35 one and happens in this one. But how I always took it is showing the events of Christmas morning of what Christmas Day would have been for that present. What I have never seen in an iteration or story of Christmas Carol is Present going to, like, the Cratchits, and it's like, oh, Ebenezer, you're here because, spoiler alert, the night that's, the visitations of spirit changes you. So this is actually you the next day. That's never been in any of them. But if I guess time travel was accurate to that, that's what it would show. I always thought that Christmas Present is the one day only leading up. That's why he has so many brothers, because they always die on Christmas Day.
Then I guess I have a problem for all of them. Because if the present's showing the future, then it's not the present anymore.
Yeah, I thought I brought this up last time. That's what he's been doing. Maybe I forgot to bring it up.
Then I would say you have a problem with every single Christmas present.
I guess I do.
That would be, he is showing the future, technically, which is irony, because he explicitly says in this one directly that the future is not his domain or whatever, even though he's showing the day in the future. And it's still a problem because Christmas Day isn't there yet. So why would he die at the end of Christmas Day when it's not there in reality?
Well, it is there in reality because it's 2 a.m.
Right, but he goes back to live out Christmas Day.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The time travel's off because if he's showing Christmas Day of the events that would occur, then Scrooge would be there. But I think this also goes in hand with Yet to Come, where this is if Scrooge never changed his way. Like, so in present day, we never see present go to Scrooge to show what Scrooge is doing on Christmas Day. It's going to the places where he wouldn't be. So going to like Fred and Clara's, Scrooge wouldn't go there without being changed. So that's the events of that day, or the Cratchits of not being changed. That's what would occur.
All right. Well, recap's going to
'Cause
be
then-
fun for me. I'm shifting some numbers around.
Oh, okay. Because then yet to come would all be if Scrooge. Nothing would be so dark and yet to come then against Scrooge if he's in the timeline changed his ways of who he is.
Shocker. Yeah, another writer tried time travel. It didn't work out for them.
I don't see it as time travel. I just see it as an alternate reality.
You know that
I see it
Which
as the vision.
depicts what happens in the future, though.
Yeah, if Scrooge never changed who he was, like if he was never visited by the spirits.
Even
how
if
it
it's
would
an
come to be.
alternate reality, it's the future of that reality,
Yeah,
which wouldn't be the present.
the present is the day itself, Christmas Day. It's not frozen time. Because then what does present have to show him? What is the existence of Christmas present to even visit then?
I'm not the one that called it Christmas present. That's not my problem.
Your issue with it, I'm hearing, is Christmas
there-
present should be a
This is the
frozen.
ghost of Christmas Day. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's not what he's called.
Of Christmas present. Upon his arrival, it is Christmas Day. It is after midnight.
I don't really have anything else to add because I've made my
Okay.
point on it.
Hey, I'd like to know, audience, if you ever saw it one way or the other. If you were, if you always saw it as how Crimson saw it, of the present never making sense, or you saw it as how I put it. And I'm very curious what the majority of thoughts on that are. Interesting. Do you think it might actually be a book thing, Crimson? Do you think in the book there's a possibility they explain it better to make more sense of the meaning of it, and multiple iterations made never explain it well enough?
I mean, that would be a
It's
question.
possible. I haven't read it.
Well, it
It's
could be to me, but
possible. I don't
as
know.
I said, I always saw it as Christmas Day. Christmas present is the current day of Christmas and how it would go about.
The Christmas present being the implication that it is the current Christmas. I get it. It's just, he's still showing the future of the day because, like I said, I was gonna change my status to something along the lines of Christmas magical bullshit, but it's true. It's what it is. It doesn't take away the fact that it is Christmas magical bullshit. It's just Christmas magic with like the word play on what this particular spirit does. I always viewed it as a plot convenience / plot device. I don't really have a major issue with the fact that present can show the future of the one specific day he's named after, but he's still showing an alternate reality, which is different altogether for what it is. He is showing essentially the future for Scrooge. So there is some inconsistency there. I just never took it as a huge issue because it's Christmas magical bullshit.
I always saw it as the past is all Christmases prior. Present is the Christmas of now. Yet to come is all Christmases future. Whereas
Okay.
most iterations of yet to come usually only go to one time, which is the Christmas at the point of Scrooge's death.
Okay, I know it's just might be the way you said it, but if you said it's Christmas past, if the Ghost of Christmas Past is every Christmas prior, why are we shown days that aren't Christmas? Like I said, it might just be the way you phrase that. That would be my follow-up question.
I guess so. I mean, it's never set in stone if the days that were being shown have to initially do with, well, they're not Christmas Day themselves. You're right. They're not Christmas Day themselves, but everything is stating a connection to Christmas.
I know there's a Christmas part. Like, I know the workers' party I was fine with because that was like a Christmas Eve party, which makes sense because it's before Christmas and stuff like that. If we're going to apply this logic, we may as well apply it everywhere.
Yeah. But is everything we see of young Scrooge aging, is that all on Christmas Eves?
I would guess not. There's they would be more explicit, I think, if that were the case.
Well, if it was
Uh,
Christmas Day, the kids probably wouldn't have school.
yeah, I mean, like
True, but the
that works.
kids
That works
in
for the
this one
'80s.
are all.
Yeah, I mean, it works for '80s because '80s Scrooge constantly avoided crowds, and he wouldn't want to go home because of his dad. So that one was given enough reason to, even if that will happen to be on Christmas Day, that works for that one. We don't really get that for this one or the 35 version.
No, this one we just get that Christmas is a waste of time, and it should be more for studying or other things used. It should be more productive. Well, all right, good to know. Let me see if I can find something to bring up. I guess it's a nitpick, being that Gonzo is cast as Charles Dickens, that the interactions he has with chickens is a break in character
For Gonzo?
for Gonzo. Because in the Muppet Show, he sleeps in the rafters with chickens, I believe, and he's very flirtatious with chickens. So there are two instances where like they go through the forest after being grappled on Scrooge, and he goes like, "Rizzo, this is Louise" or something, and then when he has Rizzo frozen on the stick, he like checks out a chicken who goes by. And unless Charles Dickens himself had something to do with chickens, I think it's
Oh,
just played into who Gonzo is, which I see as a breaking character.
probably. I would attribute that to a break in Gonzo's character for this film because most of the characters that are Muppets play their characters pretty well. Like they're in character for what this version of Christmas Carol is.
Yeah, there's a couple jabs here and there for the jokes, such as like, Jacob Marley saying, "Leave the comedy for the bears," which is pointing at Fozzie, which is out of world thing, but
And
or even with Sam the Eagle
or
of
Miss Piggy
the
getting ready to
American
go
way.
fisticuffs. Those were always that was funny.
It is, and that's in Miss Piggy's character, but I think it's also a little possible of Emily Cratchit because she even says on Christmas that like I would give Scrooge a piece of my mind, and I think that's just a take on the character.
Yeah, I
There's a
think so.
very
I don't have issues
feisty
with it. Yeah.
Emily. Now, if Emily Cratchit said, "Hey, we got to hurry up. I got to get to the Black Friday deals," as like a Miss Piggy thing because of fashion, that would be I see more in break a character. Actually, that doesn't make sense at all. Black Friday deals. That's prime. Sorry, like Christmas sales or something.
I this is kind of Michael Caine's acting's been pretty great up to this point, but this is kind of where the like reaction shots from the actor start coming in as he's observing like his past, and this is kind of where I mean everything really with going forward. This is one of the first instances where we're getting really close up like him seeing his younger self kind of vision.
Yeah, watching through. There is a detailed cut of the clock in the background. Doesn't change when we go through young Scrooge aging, but I think it could still doesn't break anything because it could still just be the time of that year. This is what Scrooge did every year. That's why he's not in the same exact position as he ages. He's like all over that room.
Mm-hmm.
Crimson, do you have a point?
All right. I'll go with more present. This is my least favorite version so far of present. Even though I like the costume, kind of cool, but didn't like this iteration of him. He lacks the passion behind the word Scrooge uses, like the overpopulation line.
He's very gentle.
Totally lacked any of the punch that line had in the other two versions. Scrooge didn't even react to it as much as the other two. He's like, oh, okay. So that was heavily downplayed in this one due to this version of present tone being different. And an issue I had, and this was the thing I was going to bring up in Act 2 with the music, was it looks like he caused the town to sing and dance around, which means he's interacting with the present and not just an observer.
if going off of the Scrooge thing of everyone being close to Scrooge caused by the song to do so, then I would go with that of intake that him singing caused everyone to start dancing around.
And is that a negative or positive?
Neutral. I see it as a neutral because it's a consistency used then with the intake of what the songs do or are.
It's not exactly the same because this is the ghosts interacting with the world now.
That's true. This ghost is actually a physical presence. As for the past and yet to come are observers.
Pretty much with any version thus far, all the ghosts have been observers.
Observers, because they can't interact with anything. This one's actually interacting. That
So
would be a nitpick. Yeah.
so I found that as an issue with consistency of the ghosts. And that's damaging just for the addition of a song.
Well, true, but he's like hugging people.
Yeah, it's got issues.
I'm in agreement for this one. You won't hear much pushback from me. I think what I did like about the scene is, again, Michael Caine's acting, because you're still pushing the character forward through the song, but you're definitely damaging the world building for the ghosts as you go along here.
Is it too much of an acceleration that Scrooge dances along?
Yeah.
No.
Ooh, interesting.
Remember, I view the songs as character changes or moments where character growth happens in. So I viewed the song as him being convinced to open up.
Ah, okay.
So when he's joining in at the end, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay. And Crimson, you see it as too accelerated in a change of character?
I do.
Okay.
And yourself.
Being how I took in the song, I think it's how I took how the songs are in this movie. I think it's an acceleration in his character of change. But I think it does work with the overall story of the retelling of this story of how this Scrooge is. Because I think at this point, seeing the change in him of present now really hits home his worry and denial when it comes to yet to come. Because in the 80s version, I saw it as past just reiterated things he already knew, and I didn't really see a change in him until present made him question things, and then yet to come more solidified stuff in that version. This one, I see he's practically changed. I see a little changes of him before a ghost even arrives, but I think that's just the good-hearted spirit of this family Muppet movie, of this interpretation of Scrooge, and it's just more solidified now when he's dancing that he's pretty much changed, but it gets more into not just change for the Christmas day, but change for the people around you. I think plays more into what yet to come teaches him.
See.
And I guess the one other issue that I don't really have, and the reason I don't really have much issue with this particular scene, with the dance, with him eventually joining in, because he's coaxed into it. It's not like he immediately starts dancing, because this Scrooge is, while he has all the, like I said, he has the character traits like greed and everything else. The factor at the front for this Scrooge is the fact that he hates Christmas, so he's kind of being lulled into understanding what the Christmas spirit actually is. So, like I said, that's how I interpreted this scene, which is why I don't take issue with it.
Yeah, and that's how I took in what the songs are in this world, in this song. I think this is what Christmas present is telling Scrooge in the lyrics of the song is what is being said in world, but the song is for the entertainment usage towards the audience.
And to clarify, Crimson, I still agree with the world building issue at present here.
Sprinks, what did he learn from past that he didn't in the previous one? Because that was one of your issues.
I think, yeah, what he learns in past is actually how important someone can be of what is lost. Because he actually mourns in this one more so than the Seymour Hicks one is like a torturous thing. The George C. Scott one is just kind of a already knew that, why are you showing me this again kind of thing. This one is actually like, he's mourning over the loss of Belle and what could have been. Because what I think is really good about this Belle compared to the other ones is seeing a different perspective of the news of Belle, not through the eyes of Scrooge. This is of Belle's. This is why I was very on the extended version, because this shows how Belle felt about the situation she was in.
The 80s one, Belle explicitly said what she was feeling.
Yes, but we're seeing it through Scrooge's perspective. And then there's that, not fanfare, but that triumphant sense of like, you're free now, you can go, which plays onto Scrooge. I think it's very focal onto him. And then we see Belle with like kids and she's moved on and everything. This Belle in the Muppet one is so much sorrow and loss, but is bittersweet towards Scrooge prospering without her. And I love how it's shot of leaving Scrooge, and then Scrooge is like coming towards her because he still loves her and likes her, but ultimately knowing that this helps him on his path, and you see him very blurred in the background walking away, and then it's just Belle by herself on the bridge for older Scrooge to come in from the opposite angle after learning and seeing with her, and I think it's very well done. Also, calling the love with Scrooge like a fairy tale is so interesting in the character he is at Fozziwig's party, being he's still very business during the party. So even though we don't really see all the interactions of Belle and Scrooge, it's literally just like their first interaction to essentially their last interaction, how much he has changed her sense on it. Now, it could be interpreted that the words she's saying are just for rhyming the song, and maybe some are a little emphasized more, or not emphasized, abbreviated more, I guess, in the sense of what's actually being said. But I think it really plays into how Scrooge changed someone that he cared for.
I see these two as very much the same, the 80s and this with Belle. This one's just done to music, and the other one isn't, to me.
Okay, and Ryder, what do you think?
Gonna mirror what Crimson said. They're the exact same. Belle was very explicit about her feelings and her opinion, and just wasn't colored with music. So whether or not it was Scrooge's perspective, it didn't matter. Belle still got out her feelings.
Okay, I'm the outlier then in this. Let's see. Let's go to Ryder.
All right, I will jump to. I'm just gonna jump to the House of the Cratchits. Again, really gonna hone in on Michael Caine's acting. Again, doesn't have as much to work with as our previous Scrooge iteration, so he has to the cuts to his face while he's acting is pretty much what you're getting as insight to the character. And we're skipping through a lot, but he's got a good one, and like the party with past, the again when he's watching their breakup kind of with Belle, and here again at the Cratchits, it is a good one I think because he's getting to see like I guess what Christmas is like with your family in theory. So like what what the kind of bonds you make can help make the joy of the holiday. There's
Yeah.
a lot to be gleaned from his small glances. Again, masterclass of acting right here.
Well, I guess regarding Bob, and we touched on a little bit, him singing with Timmy. I even though, like I said, the legs is a little uneasy for me. I did like how they depicted it with the rolling snow barrel effect that they did to visually depict him moving forward when in reality he's just walking in place.
Oh yeah, when they come into the house.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. It's very much a classic kind of stop motion puppet trick.
Yeah. The techniques they used in this is practical effect. The practical effects I think are really good. And how many they have that work. Like it's not just the same two reused. I brought it up earlier, which I thought was very funny to know is at 53 minutes and 45 seconds of the movie, pretty much right at the end of Christmas Present Song, there's a couple in the back right corner that are going down an alleyway, but they're walking so slowly because if they take another step, they're going to hit the set wall.
Oh,
So they essentially just stop walking.
interesting. Did not notice.
Another thing that I think was I brought it up in some other movie we covered for the use of it, of the film at the time to drag it out for the editing. When Christmas Present and Scrooge go to Fred's house, they are slow-moed into the fade effect. Did you two catch that?
No.
Okay.
Don't think
I-
so. No, I'm trying to picture the scene. Sorry.
Yeah, when they go to Fred's party and they're fading in, it's in slow motion until they're fully there. I think that is simply because they didn't have enough footage to fade. So they slowed it down.
That's certainly possible. Don't know for sure. This version of Fred, though, is very different from the other
Oh,
two.
yeah. Do you think he's
This one's
cooler?
absolutely. I think this is the cruelest. The first one's cruel, but I think this one's even more. Because we don't get him being positive about Scrooge at all, other than his introduction with Scrooge making fun of him or poking fun with him with the charity guys. This
I
one,
mean, the 80s party had nothing to do with Scrooge.
no. When a guest made fun of Scrooge, she's like, "No, it's not Scrooge." In this, he agreed to him being an unwanted creature. He agreed with that definition going forward into the reveal
Yeah.
of it being Scrooge.
And he's so happy with himself. The depiction of his uncle.
Yeah, so because we get so little of Fred, I can't tell if it's inconsistent with his introduction.
I would label it as an inconsistency, personally. But I understand. Okay, so this is going to be where it gets interesting. I view it as an inconsistency with Fred. However, I like the impact it all had on Scrooge specifically, who's just now understanding what the joy of Christmas is and finding, the bonds with your family and loved ones, having been shown the Cratchit. The Cratchits were shown before this, right?
No.
Not
Cratchits
yet.
are after this.
Okay, so actually that makes, in either case, it makes sense. But he just, because he learned that, he's just excited to be with his family, and he learns what his family actually thinks of him because of how hard he pushed them away. So there is a very the reaction that Scrooge has to them making fun of him specifically, really gets to him, which kind of helps feeds into like what he could have with when we were showing the Cratchits after the scene. So I like the payoff we get of Fred's cruelty, I guess, but the build up to it, I don't think we have enough of his character to justify him making fun of his uncle. Because he clearly just blatantly loves his uncle. I mean, he's more than willing to fuck with him to his face with like, hey, charity workers, come in. But there's not really a lot of that's not cruelty. That's just making fun of him, just poking light fun at the uncle who we know is his. So I think there's a distinction there. And I do think it leans towards out of character for me.
Yeah, I'm leaning out of character because the 35 Fred we saw, he was kind of cruel. He was making fun of him during the games.
Like he was the
But
one
in
that
that
was
one,
running it all up, yeah.
Yeah, he was clearly happy by the end to see Scrooge. Obviously, we don't get really that much conclusion here. And he did talk about Scrooge's money, so that there is motive of him wanting Scrooge in his life to invite him every year. This version of Fred, we have no motive to why he's inviting him. If he doesn't like Scrooge at all, why is he even bothering with him? He doesn't have the money motive. He doesn't get much joy out of Scrooge other than making fun of him. I don't know why he's a part of his life in this version.
Interesting. I guess I'm also an outlier in this because I see it in character of this Fred. Much like I said with the charity workers, I think this Fred is going to visit his uncle to, you know, see a difference in him, what could be, and he gets all he needs from visiting him, being so joyous and happy towards Christmas, and seeing his uncle so bitter that gives him the answer he needs of you know leaving. And at the party, the drink in his hand I think helps lighten him up. I don't know how much he has had to drink, but I think it definitely livens him up to the sense of having fun in a game towards the expense of his uncle. The cruelty of it is him laughing at it afterwards. But I think after the attempt of the day prior and getting the answer he got, he's not so mean towards him because the words being asked of his uncle, he's answering yes or no with what other people are asking. So he's being truthful, but he's not the one saying the words about him.
I mean, he's not pushing it off, and he's like,
No.
the unwanted creature. He's like, yes, certainly an unwanted creature. He's not like, could be. No, he's hyped up. He agrees with the sentiment.
He does. But I think that also could go just with the tone. And to make an excuse, but also with the tone of the game to try to get someone to what you're saying, but with the thought point of what other people see. Because the only one related is Fred. So Fred's trying to get them to his answer of what he has. So I agree it is cruel, but I don't see it out of character of this Fred.
Accepting that then creates other problems for me. So
How so?
Well, it disrupts the dynamic that it kind of ruins the payoff then between Scrooge and his nephew. Because
I mean, in this version, there isn't exactly a payoff.
there is a payoff. It's just it was already lackluster to begin with, and that would just take the wind out of this what little sails that had. Because if that's truly what he is, then Scrooge would know better than to invite him and bring him a gift, pretty much.
I'm not sure I know what you mean. What do you mean by bringing him a gift? What gift did he bring him?
Well, he gives gifts both to him, both to his wife and Fred.
Oh, Scrooge going. Gotcha. Other way around. Got it. Sorry, I thought you meant when Fred came to Scrooge.
Well, he did bring a gift. It was the wreath. But
the wreath. Yeah.
So I'm trying to feel best to describe it because I know I just described it really poorly.
Okay, I saw the expression on Fred and Clara when Scrooge is there in the third act, visiting them with how short that scene is. I thought it was a surprise that he did arrive.
Oh yeah,
which kind of happens in the '80s when he knocks on the door and they're surprised that he did attend. That one had a lot more to it, though.
All three versions, Fred was surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, it just ruins the character payoff for me. With I guess if this Fred is cruel, it feels like he doesn't deserve it in a way, and that doesn't really sit well with me. And I guess in a Christmas story, maybe it's a subjective problem. I guess I would take with it then.
Oh, okay.
Working my way through the logic of it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's not ignored. That I mean, even for how small it is in this movie, that it's not overlooked about Fred.
Well, it's getting the third act stuff, but I'm almost at the point to cut Fred. Honestly, without the whole,
yeah, he's
I disagree.
Without the whole Fred ending, no way. Without the whole Fred ending actually meaning much of anything, because it's just Scrooge going around the town giving people gifts. He gives it to his old teacher, to Fozzie. He's given everybody gifts. If we never had Fred is the family tie to Christmas, and we don't get a focus on it in this one. The other two, they do. It's not focused on here, and I don't think it would be missed if we just cut Fred out, because they don't focus on it themselves.
The family dynamic of the connection of uncle to nephew is missing more so in this one than the other two, and I agree with that, but I don't think it merits cutting out the entirety of Fred. I would say this is the weakest that we've covered of the nephew and uncle story.
What does he add to this version?
The beginning of seeing the difference, the whole charity worker thing helps with that whole scene, and the difference in liveliness of someone related to Scrooge and actually giving him a chance to try to do better and explaining his character of Scrooge works with the interaction at the beginning. And then the party scene really shows Scrooge seeing it more open eye how people react to him on days of this instance of like he didn't attend and how he's treated not only by his nephew but by people of the town, whether he recognized them or not, and how he's actually seen more so as, even though he's heard from my interpretation of the Song of Scrooge at the beginning that there's gossip and wordings and everything behind his back all the time. This is more of a family connection to it that's opening his eyes, because even when they give the answer, he's stunned. His mouth is agape, and he's shocked at what Clara said to then dart his head over to Fred when he agrees to it. And he's saddened by the news, which is when Present takes him away. And I think that's impactful onto this Scrooge character. And the weakest of the three interactions is Fred at the end where he goes, but then he knows if he's more of a, I would take it, if he's more in his life from now on point, they can strengthen their relationship of what could be. But that's reading into it a little bit because of just how short and fast that scene of Fred is in the third act. But I think they both play into Scrooge's character immensely in this movie.
Immensely. I disagree, because I feel like the whole point of Fred in any of the Christmas Carol stories is so Scrooge has a tie to family. So it's an aspect of Christmas is being with family members, loved ones. And that's what Fred is. He's the tie to that aspect of Christmas. And in this, the payoff isn't of that of being close with family. Like I said, he's giving it to anybody he knows. If we cut Fred out of the beginning and it's just the charity guys, it's not all that different. If we cut out the game part, his reaction to Bob's wife hating on him would still deliver the same message of, oh man, people hate me. I don't think it's actually that impactful on this version of Scrooge.
Interesting. All right. Well, that's just an agreed to disagree.
It's weird for me because Fred, I think, is typically my favorite character, and the fact that he's not my favorite character here is, I think, indicative that I just don't particularly like this Fred all that much. And that has to do with me not really liking, again, his payoff. Having listened to you guys go back and forth, I think they do just enough to justify his presence. I don't think it makes him a good character. Because all the stuff you were saying, Sprinks, to me just sounds like, yeah, they kept the archetype of Fred without doing any of the groundwork for Fred.
Okay.
That being said, I think, again, I'm in agreement. I love the payoff to Scrooge's reaction to how people think of him. And I was thinking about if I were to remove Fred, and mind we can't because we would be changing more than one scene, but or like I wouldn't put him under our removable character list because we'd be changing more than one thing about the story. But I think if I were to make an adjustment and we was going to remove him, I think all you have to do is just change this scene, just to make it just random people in the street, because he already knows the town gossips about him. That's what the beginning song proves. So just getting that perspective more freshly, what they really think about him. So it's not hushed whispers and stuff like that. And it would be just as impactful, because it hurts while it's family. The problem is the family dynamic is completely missing. So again, not completely, but it's
very weak.
It's very weak.
Okay. There was something I didn't bring up in well, actually, it's still this act. But when Past leaves, and Scrooge is on the bridge crying over the loss of Belle, and it transitions to him in his bed, it's a decent transition, I think. It's close to matching up where he is, but he's off.
Yeah, I mean, same with Future. Cloak transition. It's pretty darn close.
Oh, I think that one's better.
It's better,
You mean
It's
at the
not
grave when
perfect.
he's crying on him?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's better because it actually falls into the next scene.
Mhm.
This one's more of a fade transition where he's just not lined up as well as it could have been.
Yep, I agree.
I like the detail. It probably wasn't. I don't know how easy it was to do, but Rizzo on the goose when he falls down the chimney, how well and accurate his shadow on the wall matches up to his movements.
Yeah, I don't know on that one.
I'm sure being a full body movement of the Muppet, it was green screened, but to me, the shadow, was it two overlapped green screens of the Muppet and the shadow over the scene itself?
No, I mean, the shadow could have been CG, but there is CG elements in this with like Kermit ice skating and stuff.
That's not CG.
The
I
legs
don't
aren't CG in that part.
know.
They look like
That
it.
that's a second shot of puppeteering movement. That's two takes where one is one leg and one's the other, and it's moved on the movement
Are
of
you saying this
the
as
Muppet.
fact or how you think they did it?
How I think I did it. I don't think there's CGI in this movie.
Okay. If you're saying that as fact, then I would have taken it. Okay.
No.
So that's how you think they did it. Okay. All right.
What I know for fact is the present Muppet is a 3-man Muppet where there's a full person in the costume for the arms and movement of it, and someone else is doing the voice and controlling the facial structures offset.
Man, that makes sense.
I'll jump us to
Yeah.
the Cratchit household. Small moments. Again, they do a really good job of just quickly, like, getting through the family dynamics. So, like, Miss Emmy Piggy, just confusing her twins. And then again, once Bob Kermit gets to the house, the family just kind of just swarms him when he gets home. So just tiny little nuggets that I really, really appreciate for family dynamics. Because it's very, very quickly done. We get our sense of whimsy and humor and good stuff.
Yeah, her forgetting the daughters' names was probably one of the funniest things for me. I couldn't tell if it was intentional or not, but the way I read it was that the daughters are like such non-characters in the Christmas Carol storylines that even the characters don't even know their names.
That's pretty funny to look at it, especially how
that'd be funny.
These Muppets are breaking out of character in parts to remember their lines and scenes, like
So
Sam the Eagle and Gonzo. I can see it that way.
I couldn't tell if that was the intention of the line or not, but I found amusement from it.
It works if they're twins, so it works even if it's not the intention behind the line. Like, you know how Fred and George just constantly fuck with Mama Weasley.
Yeah. You call us your mom. I know this is probably a nitpick for Crimson because he brought it up in the 80s version. When Scrooge goes into the Cratchit house, I think before Tiny Tim's song, he doesn't try to open the front door.
This one's worse because he just walks through it.
He walks right through it as if he knew he could do it.
Doesn't he leave by walking through the mantelpiece in Fred's house?
Present takes him. Like, puts his arm around him and moves him. This one is they're outside looking through the window.
Oh, okay,
and
so he could just
Scrooge just goes, Bob Cratchit, and walks through the front door, just fading through it.
You are right. I had that as an issue in my notes.
Like, knowing he could. But it also plays into the third act of something you touched on in the 80s one.
Touching snow.
Yeah. Because this one, you can see that he's not touching.
Yeah. Which was your way of saving it from the 80s one. So
yeah.
Does that 180 you on it on this one?
Oh, this one's a problem.
All right.
This one doesn't. This one clearly shows him not trying and just obliviously knowing he could do something.
Yeah. Yep, definitely one of the issues I had for this one that was worse than the previous one.
The only thing someone can say that I think could help is the Ghost of Christmas Present and the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come have different physical present forms over what Scrooge can do in their visitation. But I think that's a stretch to say.
That's going best faith and nothing back.
Yeah, I've said something to the effect that they might have different powers. I think in the '80s one with Scott, but that's reading into it because we don't really have any evidence of how the ghosts function directly.
Yeah. I mean, past can make him fly, but what's saying present and yet to come can't.
Yeah, they have no need
and
to.
Charles Dickens stole a grapple from Batman, so there's a lot going around.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything else for Act 2?
Addition of the teacher, I don't fully understand the purpose of, because we had Fozzie as that kind of character. It's also in the previous version of Luderform. The previous iterations of that. The teacher, I don't really get the integration of.
I see it as a more showing to the kid audience or younger audience that this is Scrooge going into business and sticking to it against like a Christmas tradition, which plays more into Fozziewig's party, how during the party he's asking Fozzie for like, I don't know, a form signage or something changed. But I think it's also into the joke of Sam the Eagle's character with the whole American way, British way.
And that was amusing. That was funny.
Yeah, got a good smirk out of me. I got 2 points left for the act, so I'll just bulldoze through them. I like that Timmy is an off color green compared to his brother and Kermit, because obviously he's the sickly one. So tiny little detail I quite enjoyed. And while I'm on top of
Tiny Tim is played by Robin, which I believe is Kermit's nephew.
Okay. And then obviously Miss Piggy's twins. I just like them echoing her sentiments when she's cursing Scrooge, like, even though he's a humbug, and they just hum agreement at the same time. It's good stuff.
And terribly dressed.
Yeah, exactly. Just again family stuff that I quite enjoy. And then my last note is I like that Present's hair starts to gray when he's about to die.
Yeah, the other iterations haven't had that. Haven't had an actual aging to Christmas Present.
Or dying. Yeah,
I guess so. This one's a pretty distinct. He's dead.
I
the 80s one, he just faded.
And well, they kind of ruined what I liked in this with Animal. I liked Animal with the triangle because he's the crazy drum character.
It was so torturous.
So I liked him doing the triangle, but then he actually played the drums. I'm like, oh well, kind of took out the immersion of this setting we're at this point.
I think it's like the Sam the Eagle thing. It played into the character as the joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more directly to the luau outfits you referenced earlier.
Oh, yeah.
But took me out of the bit, unfortunately, for that one. I guess my last thing for this act is the added scene, the extended part, the song that was removed. Because, like I said, I watched it all the way through and then watched that afterwards. And I noted that I didn't know that part is where the addition was added. So I did write in my notes that it was that short, because she said, "You loved me once," and then she walked away. I'm like, oh, she didn't even break up with him. She just walked away. There's nothing here. Why is this so empty?
Yeah,
and then I found out later
Rizzo's
it was empty for a reason.
It.
Yeah, I was like, this isn't emotional at all. Granted, I didn't really find the song all that emotional either, but it definitely gave more context to the emotions given by Rizzo.
I guess so, yeah, because in the theatrical, then it's just, "You loved me once," Belle walks away, and then
walks away.
is just crying his eyes out on his bed.
What a hilarious thing.
You missed the whole duet part where he's choking on his own words, singing along with her, which is great.
Well, it's even better than that, because that's him remembering her words, singing in this instance with her.
Yeah.
But if you're going with it, they're not actually singing, and this just them talking. He remembered the words she said, and he's saying them back to her, which is good.
Good stuff. Really loved it. So yeah, the addition of the extended scene does improve the film.
And
Oh
that
yeah,
makes the final song actually warrant its existence.
that's also true. The connection of the same beat and rhythm of the final song. Even though that song does have a little bit of motifs throughout the movie in little bits, it doesn't actually have like a matched to it. And the matching, I think, is very well. Crimson, did you have anything else for Act 2?
Should be my last one.
All right, cool. Well, then with that, Act 3, from here to the end of Christmas Present dying, to the end credits. Let us begin with Crimson.
All right. I will point out another potential nick to Scrooge. This one can be a bit more contested, though. He gave the child 5 shillings, which is different than the other versions, but that's not the problem. I'm pointing out he gave the money preemptive. Moneyman Scrooge, in a place with poor people, just handed out the money before delivery. I think it would have been amazing, and it would be against the message of the Christmas movie, if the kid just ran off with the money and never brought the turkey.
Well, that's the kid he threw the wreath at.
Yeah.
So
That
I know
makes
it
it
is.
worse.
And even more reason to just steal the money and not actually give him what he wants.
that's true.
So found that as a bit of a nick.
Yeah, I don't know. This is one of those things where I don't know why they changed the scene. They could just have. If you wanted to change the scene's dynamic, just have him go with the kid to grab the turkey, and things can play out as normal as they go together to grab it. It's just a little
I would
weird.
say he needs to give a line of what he would reward the kid if he returned.
Yeah, that too. That would work as well.
That would give incentive for the kid to come back with the goose to get something. Because right now the shillings are just to pay for the goose.
Yeah. So like here's the shillings to pay for it. Come back and I'll give you a full crown. There you go. Similar to what's been said in the previous films, but not quite the same. I'm fine with that. So
The other ones he didn't pay up front. He told him to bring the guy over.
Yeah.
He pays the guy, and then he pays the kid.
Yeah. So like I said, if they wanted to, keep something similar to what they have, they definitely need to edit a couple things.
Yeah, and then the kid found him with the turkey. He wasn't at the house anymore. How'd
That's
the kid
true. He
find
was just
him?
out on the street.
So
He found him through the Christmas spirit, I guess.
this kid had some issues tied with him.
Yeah, maybe it's just the Christmas magical bullshit out of it again. I don't know.
I brought it up earlier. I do like now for this Christmas morning, everything is more brighter. The duller greens and reds of buildings are now more vibrant coloring. So like everything's more happy and Christmas filled.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just like magically like there's lights everywhere and tinsel and a whole bunch of decorations. Just the coloring of the sets are brighter.
It is right.
I'll jump to probably my favorite addition in this version of the Christmas Carol, and that is the charity workers giving Scrooge his first gift he's probably gotten in a long while.
Oh yeah, and it
Including
complements
the
itself
wreath
so well.
in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And yeah,
And I like that it connects the choice of red coloring. Sorry to interrupt, but to match what Fred's spirit, because Fred had a red scarf, and what we've seen of someone with a red scarf and how they feel towards Christmas, to match up now with Scrooge and his change.
mm-hmm.
I think it's very good.
And for me, again, Michael Caine really, really carries this version of Scrooge, and you can feel the full weight of like the acting when he gets the gift, and I love it. Because obviously the implication is the charity workers are so moved by Scrooge's act of charity, they just inherently feel the need to give him something to pay him back, even though they don't have to do that because that's just the spirit of Christmas. So I think there's a lot of like, the spirit of Christmas is very inherent in the scene, and that's why I like it so much. But I also happen to love it for the way it happens to play into the Scrooge's character arc and Michael Caine's acting, and it just could go on and on. It was good. I really, really loved it.
It also goes great with the costuming, because prior he says, I need to put on my best clothes, like wear my best, and he's in full black. Everything he's wearing is black, but that's of Scrooge's character. That's what he wears, and we've seen him wear is black clothing because of a black cold heart, and this is a color he takes in to break away from that, and I think that really helps.
Yep.
Yeah, I can see that.
How do you guys feel? Oh, never mind. Crimson, go.
You first.
I was going to say, how do you two feel about this iteration of Yet to Come?
I liked the visual aesthetic minus the short legs because then it kind of made it funny looking.
This
but
looks like a Dementor.
I like the hooded look. I liked that.
It,
Um,
this is gonna sound really
but there's
weird.
not much more to its character because it doesn't really have much like the others. So.
Yeah, I'd say you get more of a sense of like horror / mystery from for the other two iterations. This one felt this is so weird to say. It felt like it was from Leica Coraline. Just the way the costume was. I mean that as a compliment. So I did not get Dementor or anything from that. I felt that this was a very good fit for this version on this world, but I got a very much a stop motiony kind of look because it didn't have the same ethereal, fearful presence that the others brought, the mystery. It was just quiet, which is fine. It works for this version.
Okay. I do see it as different how, what was it, 35 was the shadowing, so it's very dark look to it, and I think that was a lot of just mystery that was into that one. The 80s one I think was very scary, especially with that metal gate sound effect thing. It was very uneasy to it. This one I think is very like heavy sorrow or whatever, what the theme it has.
It feels like this one just feels sorrowful. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Is it a cello? Trying to figure out what that instrument's used for its kind of sound effect.
Sounded like a cello, but I'm not much of an instrument guy.
Yeah. But it's a little uneasy. I know it's a Muppet, everything, but his hands, or the hands it has without the fingernails, just made me uneasy. Like it's not humanish.
Mm-hmm.
I did like that Charles wasn't around.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
For me, that was then okay. The writers actually know that they need to keep a more serious tone, so they're going to remove the people that often break that. So that for me was just like okay, good. They understand when humor can be too much.
Yeah,
I agree.
I wrote
think that helped the pacing.
I agreed. I wrote when he went to visit Bob's. Oh, and he was happy to go to Bob's, which was a nice detail. Was all right. I'm ready for this death like future musical number because we haven't gotten one with Future yet. I'm so excited for the Death of Tim song, and we never got one.
I'm kind of happy we didn't. They kept it serious for like well, not that the song wouldn't ruin the seriousness of the moment, but it just kind of the quiet, as Scrooge put it outside, really hits home.
Yeah, I'm glad there wasn't one, but it would have been amusing to me if there was a Death of Tim song.
Yeah. No, I think the darkest the song they have is Scrooge at the very beginning, and I guess they didn't need a second one. But the use of silence plays very well with the Yet to Come in this movie. Mm-hmm. It's not a bunch of music in the background at all times. It's a lot of quiet talk and pauses for reactions, and I think they nailed it very well of like what they were going for.
Mm-hmm. And especially, like I said, just you get a sense of dread when you realize how quiet the Cratchit house is, which is fair. It should feel that way because of what happened and stuff like that. So good stuff.
Yeah.
I will
also the inner. Oh, you go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay, I was going to say the introduction to this Yet to Come is very spooky.
With
the
rolling
just
cloud.
The empty graveyard with no music, and then this huge mist cloud coming in to just enwrap Scrooge, and he's terrified.
I mean,
and then
I would be too.
The backlit illumination of the lighting behind Yet to Come to really just give him more of a silhouette look. I think it was really cool.
Mm-hmm. I was going to jump back. I jump back from the Cratchit house to when they're listening to the people talking about his death in the rain. Skirting around a world building problem that we touched on about him interacting with the world around him and getting wet or touching snow. They're under a beam, so they're not getting drenched with rain.
Mm-hmm.
Just a funny little note that I picked up on.
That's true. Sprinks, something you I think brought up in the previous two coverings was the lack of a Scrooge visiting Bob at the end. This iteration, we get that. I imagine
Yes.
this is the one why you like it in the first place. And having experienced this, I don't like it.
Oh, I like it because it actually holds up a line of, Scrooge saying, I'll be like a father to Tim, and actually knowing, physically seeing Tim.
The way I see this compared to the others was the others, he did it for Bob. This is for himself. This is so he could see that he's changing as a person. It's a lot more selfish focused in this one than the others. The others purely for Bob. This is for himself.
And he doesn't.
I can agree.
He doesn't.
No,
do
I
it
see that
anonymously.
definitely.
Yeah.
No, but this one definitely where he goes to them after saying, I'll raise your salary, and invites them to, like, the Cratchits. He goes, can I invite you to a turkey dinner?
And then walks
and
into
before
their
they
house.
can answer for permission or anything, all these people just enter their house.
Yeah. So I didn't like this conclusion.
Okay, I can see it as Scrooge is still learning. I mean, a one-night change, but he's trying to do better. So I get it, but I don't fully like it to 100%. What I do find very weird, though, is after the God Blesses Everyone, Fred is at the table.
Just teleported. Yeah.
No, I guess
he
joined
everyone
the
in the
crowd.
world's in that room.
Well, Clara's not, but Fred is. It was just weird to see Fred at that table.
Well, I just wrote there's not enough turkey for this many people.
No, gosh, no. People are out in the streets.
Yeah,
there's people singing across the street in their own house.
Bit absurd, this ending here.
I think it fits because it's a Muppet movie, but that's pretty much the only reason I have to liking it. Because I see what you're saying, Crimson. I think I'm trending towards an agreement. It fits, but it fits the tone of this movie. It would not work in the other versions we've seen so far at all.
No. The tone and world of what this movie is fits. The practicality of it, no. Crimson, do you have any other points you would like to share? I know, unfortunately, audience, Crimson's on a little bit of a time frame. Try to give him as much of the floor as we can.
Yeah, we got through a good chunk. I don't know why his teacher and Fozzie are together in the same house.
They should be dead.
Yeah,
well, they're Muppets. We don't know the aging of Muppets, so I'm not too worried on that.
My joke was that they're in the same senior home. Old folks home.
Yeah, so I did question what they're alive, but they are Muppets. We don't know the life cycle of a Muppet. But the fact that they're both in the same house to deliver the presents is very convenient, just to reduce the time for the gift giving stuff. Let's see.
To me, that should have been removed. I don't think that was needed.
Well, I don't really think the teacher was needed, but I agree. I mean, I think
I would remove that to get more with Fred.
Yeah. If time was an issue in this, which I doubt it was, then that like 5 seconds, I guess, could be used elsewhere.
Because those are fully new made Muppets. Those are fully designed for that one scene.
I mean, there's a lot of Muppets in this movie. I'm curious how many they made in this.
I'm just, oh shoot! I think I read somewhere it was like 228 or something. Muppets are in this movie. Something along that line. But it's just like for how small of screen time this old Sam the Eagle and Fozzie have, it seems like it just wasn't needed.
Yeah, I agree. There was a line that Tim liked watching the ducks, and I'm like, well, that's a little weird in this universe now, isn't it?
Well,
potentially, we've discussed that, yeah. But in my notes, I'm like, well, that's weird. You enjoy your son spying on people. We have no confirmation as they're Muppet ducks.
Hey, he likes looking at the duck house.
Yes, the duck house. Um, then what was the last point I had? It was for Sprinks. I don't want to lose it. Where is it? Uh, darn it! I don't remember what it was.
That's great.
That's so
Very
annoying.
helpful.
It was
That's why
It
you
was
have notes, Crimson.
it was a big one.
Well, I guess while you search your notes,
So not too
I
long here.
very much enjoy, I guess, the final scene with this Scrooge. Because this Scrooge, let's see, how best to describe it. So every Scrooge has a little bit of difference and nuance when it comes to, like, how they play their final scene with the Christmas future. Um, I think this Scrooge is. It's not. This Scrooge is not really in denial. It's more of an aversion, which again is a little bit different to the other previous iterations, just by his portrayal. So I much appreciate, I guess, the subtle differences in how each actor makes the character their own.
Yeah. Now, to give Crimson as much time as he can, Crimson, unless you have another point you need to get off your chest, how about we go with your rating and summary?
All right. If I come up with it, I guess I can do it in the recap. All right. So I will start with my subjective. Why not? I didn't really say much on it in the history section or when we talked about Jim Henson stuff. But Muppets is not my forte. I've never been a fan of the Muppets. I've never gravitated towards them. I haven't gotten much entertainment out of them. The most entertainment I get is Kermit meme videos and stuff. That's the most enjoyment I get out of Muppets.
That's fair. That's my life with SpongeBob.
Exactly. So going into this, I didn't have much expectations and enjoying it. And by the end, there was stuff that amused me. Some of the fourth wall break jokes were pretty solid, like the American way, British way, the fourth wall break of leaving the future bit because it's too scary. There was some good stuff for entertainment. But then again, there was stuff I don't like. It's a musical. None of these songs gravitated towards me. I didn't really care for any of them. The best one would probably be the one that was cut out. But even then, I don't really care for it all that much. I didn't like Gonzo as Charles Dickens, excluding the humor that come from it that I enjoyed. But as a whole, I didn't enjoy it. So I was bounced between a 4.5 and a 5, and I'm thinking 4.5 is where I'll stick subjectively.
Okay. Is this your favorite Muppet thing you've seen?
Because I remember Treasure Island so little, I don't even know if I could say that counts. So, yes, because I don't have much.
Would you say dinosaurs?
Oh, I definitely enjoy dinosaurs more than this.
Okay.
Yeah, I like dinosaurs. So 4.5. Maybe if I go back in the books and compare that to other things, it might raise up to a 5. But as of now, it's 4.5. Objectively, this is not as flawless as the previous two Christmas carols we've covered. A lot more nicks and issues in this one. As I said, I might retroactively adjust the objective problems I have just due to me now realizing the issue with present for me. But I will apply that to this one since we're covering it. The whole present spiel we had. The nick of Applegate, not getting pressed for money, but just getting tossed out. The charity guys even going to Scrooge, even though in this it is established everyone knows who Scrooge is, so why would they try? Spriggs tried to throw in benefit of the doubt if they're just hopeful that he could change. I'm not going for it in this universe. Gonzo and Rizzo being real or not real and not sticking to it is obviously an issue because they're kind of a big part of this movie, being the narrators. And comedic relief and how they interact with stuff. So that's inconsistent. Scrooge, his interactions as a ghost, I guess, walking through the door, but then touching the snow as discussed. That's an issue. I did find Fred is inconsistent with what little we got of him, as I stated throughout earlier. The songs integrations put into question whether or not they're in world or not, but I think the worst aspect of it is with President interacting with the people during the song. That's the most egregious part of it. Spanks brought up Gonzo changing his wardrobe, and that does create an inconsistency because we don't have a reason to why he's changing him, how he's changing, when he's changing. So that's just some inconsistency with that. They still don't explain why Marley didn't get ghosts, so that's just a continued issue I have with this franchise, I guess, if we call it a franchise.
I don't know if you touched on it yet, but the touching the snow on the grave.
Yeah, I just talked about that. Him walking through the door in the snow. So with all of that, I was bouncing between a 6.5 and a 7, and I'm giving it a 6.5. But same with my subjective. If I compare it to other stuff, it might go up to a 7, but 6.5 right now.
Okay. And so far, this is the Christmas Carol that you're also considering your take on Christmas Present, because you didn't have that mindset for the previous two we've covered.
Like I said, I might adjust numbers in the recap due to this revelation, because I didn't really catch on to that until this giving the 12 o'clock thing, and then it came to my attention and everything else. So that is where I'm at.
Okay. Last question I have for you before you go then is, you gave your favorite song When Love Is Gone. What is your least favorite song?
The one I said was removable, which was the Bob
Tiny
Family
Tim's.
Cratchit stuff. Yeah, not catchy. Nothing. I felt nothing.
Okay, bless us all. That's it.
Yeah, and then we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, cool.
All
Well,
right.
Crimson, you gotta go. We will see you next week for the next Christmas Carol coverage.
All right. Enjoy the rest of this pod, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
Bye, Crimson.
goodbye, everybody.
Farewell.
Bah humbug.
Oh, no.
Got us there at the end. Clever bastard.
Got us, yeah. Real 4.5 delivery line. All right, Redder. Well, let's go to you then for Act 3 point if you have to go. Or point to make.
I don't have to go, but I appreciate the encouragement. I will go to the choice not to use a song for Tiny Tim's death. We kind of covered it earlier, but I really appreciate that they went with just the quiet, as you said, because it's one of the themes that follows the Ghost of Christmas Future. Just they don't really play into the music all that much. It's very, very quiet. It has a somber tone, and I think the quiet at the table as the family mourns their loss is very heartfelt, even if they're puppets, which goes to show, it can be strong characters no matter the medium.
They don't say he's dead or outright put it literally, but they give so many clues to it, and Scrooge's reaction to what's going over, and then just the camera pan from the table to the chair of the vacant seat in the corner, as how Present put it, I think just fits very well with the tonnage of sorrow that a Muppet movie can portray.
Yeah, I agree. They definitely they hit all the correct emotions for that scene.
Yeah. Now, one thing about it that questioned me a little was Scrooge's intelligence, because there have been things previously, like when they were at in Present and they went to Fred's house and he asked if people play games during Christmas. I think that was a weird line for him to ask. Or just maybe he's so unintuned with what Christmas Day can be to ask that question.
It's possible, and the reason I say that is because we found him even working on Christmas Eve with his employer earlier in the film. So it's possible that he's like just unfamiliar with that experience because he's never done it himself. But I can see where you're leaning with it. It definitely could be an intelligence problem because even if you don't participate in yourself, Christmas is the most ubiquitous holiday in mankind's history. So
Yeah.
you get that people play games, do family stuff together. So I don't see why he would be too surprised by that.
And another example I have to his intelligence thing is, which I think also just plays to a kid audience, is when Christmas Present says, "And last I leave you with the ghost of Christmas yet to come," and Scrooge goes, "You mean the future?" To kind of play off like not knowing what yet to come means.
Yeah, that's see, that's kind of what I know that's there for the kids, right? I just wish that they would have more faith in the kids because kids don't need
Especially
to,
with the what was the line said earlier or something that Crimson brought up that Charles Dickens says
omniscience,
yeah, kid
omnipotence,
probably doesn't know what
omniscience.
that means.
Yeah, well, just like I would rather that so the kids would learn something new. And so I'm I'm always on the side of like don't dumb down your work for children. Assume children are very emotionally intelligent. Have faith in them because I mean like Toy Story is a child's movie. Wall-E is a child's movie, and they're not like
Well, one could
musicals or
say
anything.
all but one Pixar movie is a child's movie.
Yeah, so like it's Aladdin's a children's movie. So there's a lot of movies that have a lot of depth and take stories to dark places that are meant for kids. So for me, stuff like that is it bothers me because it just kind of for me it's like dumbing down content for children when you should have faith in children to, if not understand the words you're saying, to understand what's going on emotionally. You know what I'm saying? To have that radar.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I
The
mean,
reason why I bring up these 2 points of Scrooge's intelligence lacking is because here at the loss of Tiny Tim with Emily Cratchit's tears, he knows those are because of Tiny Tim. Like
Yeah.
someone doesn't have to tell him what it is; he can interpret it from what's being shown.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, and then kind of just continuing on with that, it's I understand why. Again, it's just a shame because it does affect the character in a way. Like it's one of the criticisms anime gets all the time is because anime feels. I understand why they do it, and it is a criticism that is rightly thrown at the genre itself, which is anime has a tendency to over-explain things. Um, and granted, obvious a lot of the time they do that to kind of just front load the world building and everything. So it's not like they don't do it without a purpose, but it's a fair criticism to also throw towards them in the sense that they
Yeah,
just have a tendency to just point out something extremely obvious in like the first episode or two to make sure that the audience understands this is how the world works in this anime, that sort of thing.
yeah. No. I get that. And multiple instances of anime do that.
Yeah. Um,
A point I've found. Oh shoot, what was it? I think it was the 35 version, or one of the versions. Scrooge says, "I'm on my knees," praying. And so far, we covered one that had it and one that didn't. This one has it. Like Muppets also has it, but I can't recall if that was the George C. Scott one where he's in his bed saying it and he's not on his knees, or if that was the Seymour Hicks one.
I think it might be the Seymour Hicks one.
Okay. One of these 3, he says the line and he's not on his knees.
Yeah. The George C. Scott one works in a
Is
way.
that he's on his knees and he fell asleep on his knees? That's
Well-
why he's out of bed?
Well, yeah. That's the one where he wakes up when it was obvious that he would spend up the... So, in George C. Scott's version, he wakes up in the bed and then says his lines of dialogue over, and then we kind of cut away to Christmas morning. And when it's Christmas morning, the bells ring, we see that he has since gotten out of bed and he's like had fallen asleep in the prayer position almost.
Okay, I think that's the one that I didn't like because he says the line, "I'll pray on my knees," while he's in bed, not on his knees.
Well, he said he'll pray to get on his knees, right? And then he gets on his knees to pray. So it's not like he was
He
praying
said,
while
"I'm."
he was saying that.
He said, "I'm praying on my knees." I believe it's a line that all three of these Scrooges have said, but two of them have done it.
I don't know if I don't have an issue with that because you can be on your knees in your bed and pray. Like you can pray on your knees while in your bed without
You
necessarily
can.
needing to get out of your bed. It's one of those
No,
things
no, no.
where
You absolutely can. It's just it's not shown.
yeah, I don't think we could see. Like I said, I don't know. I'd have to rewatch because I don't remember seeing like his legs stretched out beneath him on the bed. So he might have just been praying on the bed. So it still works in quotation marks, but
Okay.
don't know.
That's just something I've caught in all three versions of when that line is delivered, if they're doing what they're saying or not. Because then it's the one where it's not is simply said just to quote off of the book and not follow the actions in world, which is why I have a nitpick with that so much.
Yeah. I think so I didn't cry at any point during the film. I haven't cried yet during any of the Christmas Carol films.
Neither have I.
But I did get close
Well,
with this one.
okay, I was gonna say I haven't cried in our watch throughs of these for this season, but I'm sure I have cried in watching the Muppets once before in my life.
Probably. So I didn't cry, but I definitely felt my eyes water because I brought up the scene earlier with Scrooge getting the gift from the charity workers.
Yeah.
That one again, strong acting from Michael Caine. I was moved to near tears with that.
Okay. I think the closest I got of tears is Scrooge in the graveyard seeing his grave. Not revealing it yet, but like walking towards it and then backing up and saying, "Are these things that may be or will be?"
Yeah,
And then saying I can change, like constantly in denial of like fear.
yeah, this one isn't denial. I think it's aversion because I think there obviously C. Scott's version is very much placed into denial, and I think this one is aversion. So like he already accepted what it is. He just doesn't want to.
I agree. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
So-
see that a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. So like he's already accepted. He just doesn't want to be the one to do it. It's weird because every Scrooge just has, like I said, just a little bit different. They play this scene, so there's just a different emotion you can pull out of it, which I actually really like being able to do.
Yeah. But I think just no offense to Seymour Hicks or George C. Scott, but I think Michael Caine's the best actor of the three.
Oh, absolutely, not even close. I think Michael Caine acted them all under the table. That's the reason why, like I said, I don't have any shame in saying this. I think this would be the worst Scrooge we've covered, if not for Michael Caine doing so much with what little he has.
Yeah. Possibly. I don't know anyone around his age in 1992 who would also be like up for casting.
Yeah, well, even in general, like I can see
Like what, Ed Helms? No.
I would. He's not British, but I would love to see Edward James Olmos play a version of Scrooge.
Oh.
Edward James Olmos is a phenomenal fucking actor, so he can very much. You can see the inner monologue with his eyes. I think he would have done a good job in this role. But to be fair to him, he would fucking hate working with the Muppets. He hates that sort of thing.
Being that Crimson is gone, and you probably wouldn't get this because he doesn't have it like the two of you and I somewhat do. But later down the line, I would love to see an iteration of Christmas Carol where Benedict Cumberbatch is Scrooge and Martin Freeman's Bob Cratchit.
Oh man, that would be a good casting when they're older.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I would love to see Ian McKellen play Scrooge.
That would be cool.
Because
He did play an old Sherlock.
Yeah.
Was it just called Holmes, I think, where he's like losing his memory?
Maybe, yeah. I think just because Ian McKellen's such a phenomenal actor, I would love.
Oh, yeah.
He's one of those people that I would just kill the role. And obviously
Possibly give Patrick Stewart a run for his money for his role.
That's true.
As Scrooge.
That's true.
Sorry, audience. We just went down to like Sherlock connection. Apologies.
Quite a bit. You know who would also make a good Scrooge when he gets older?
Not Robert Downey Jr.
No, I was gonna say Robert Downey Jr.
That I don't know about that one.
I think when he gets older, I think
I'm certain he could try his best, but I don't think it would make like top 3.
He's a good actor. Okay, let me put it this way. I don't think he'll make top 3, but I won't lie and say I would love to see his interpretation of Scrooge.
Okay, I can see that.
Because of all the
I could see Benedict Cumberbatch being a better fit for Scrooge over Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, I can see that
But I'm
too.
not saying Robert Downey Jr. would do a bad job. I don't think he'd do a bad job at all.
Yeah. I think it's just because Robert Downey Jr. is also a phenomenal actor, and I would just like to see. It's one of those things that I would love to see. In the same way, since we talked about Ian McKellen and talked about Gandalf, I'm not lying. I would have loved to seen what Sean Connery's version of Gandalf looks like. He's not going to take the title of it away from Ian McKellen, though.
No. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Little fan cast.
Little fan casting.
I'll go to something that I saw as what we've seen from Scrooge doing like pranks of Christmas Day, like a change in his character. Is it a prank that he gave his bookkeepers coal for Christmas? It's just a tongue-in-cheek thing I saw.
Was that coal? I thought it was candies.
It was.
And things.
No, it was baskets of coal. But that's what they wanted the day prior, like more coal for the fire. But then again, it's giving coal on Christmas.
Yeah, I think it's a tongue-in-cheek thing because you didn't fill their stockings with it, you know?
Yeah.
For all we know, there could be other things that he gave them too, but obviously we just see the coal. He might be like, it might be one of those things where he's like, that's like part 1 of like a prank. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously whenever he pulls a prank on Bob every day on whenever he returns to work in the previous iterations.
Yeah.
So that might just be part 1 to a prank that he might have in mind, which I'm fine with if that's the case. That's just reading into the character.
Yeah, I like the connection of this one though, because he doesn't have the entourage of all these people with the food and gifts with him delivering gifts. This is Scrooge by himself in his office, which seems like more of a personal connection to these people.
It's weird.
And I like that.
I would have it's good. Because it's coal. I think it's done for the comedy's sake. I would have also preferred him like giving a basket of coal and then something else, you know. So like he's giving them what they asked for. It's coal on Christmas, but also he's giving them something else.
Yeah, I guess that's the whole tongue-in-cheek thing. That's why I see it more as the prank, because it's not other things or like a bunch of things with the coal. It's just the coal itself.
Yeah. We kind of touched on it. It's very weird that to have the Fozzie Bear and his school headmaster again as like really, really old people. I actually quite like that they're so old that they're struggling to listen to what even when they're shaking the box. It's just very small, subtle detail. Amused me.
That's just a Fozziewig gag.
Yeah. And I guess one more thing. I guess the difference between how we both saw, or how I saw the music differently from how the two of you were taking it in. I took it as like when Scrooge is talking about how everyone will be his niece and nephew, every like little boy and little girl will be his niece and nephew, that sort of thing. I took that as his character growth to reaching the point where he could now be a second father for Tiny Tim. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No. That's a good connection of delivery. Because we didn't really bring it up, but I guess you're great to put it. I think the songs are written very well for the point they're trying to get across. Yeah,
I don't think any of the songs are bangers. I wouldn't add any of them to my Christmas playlist because as much as I'm ashamed to admit it, I don't know why I feel shame about it. I'm joking. I do have a Christmas playlist, but I wouldn't add these songs to my Christmas playlist.
I have a handful of them added, but not all of them.
Yeah. Maybe if I watch this movie
I'll bring it up at the end of what's your favorite and what's your least as we ask Crimson. So
I just I guess maybe even if I watch this movie more annually, which I might, but up until then point, I don't see myself adding the songs because sometimes I just watch something enough to where I just get used to the music and then add the music to my playlist.
Oh, like Hot Chocolate.
Yeah, kinda. Though to be fair, that song's a banger.
I'm sure it's because you've seen the movie umpteenth amount of times.
Let's see. When I probably saw that movie.
Save it for the history when we cover it.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Going back to you then.
I had something written that I'm sure you would like. How do you feel about a movie that has a line actually telling people that being that it's based off of a book, to go read the book, and it doesn't break like character of
Like
what's
it's not like Deadpool leaning into the camera kind of.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still a fourth wall break. But Gonzo actually says, if you like this, go read the book.
How do I feel about that? It works for the world. It would. So, for example, it would work for Deadpool 2. Go read the comic book. I would find it very weird if Wolverine suddenly did that.
True. But I meant more of a subjective sense.
Oh,
Like objectively,
subjective.
it works, but like a subjective, like anytime you see like a Harry Potter or a Divergent or Maze Runner, it's like the audience themselves are being like, "Hey, have you read the books?" And like, no, it's like, "Oh, you should go read the books. I read the books. Oh, I think you really like it. Did you like the movie?" Like that kind of thing. This is a movie where the movie itself tells you to go read the book.
Yeah, that's going to come down to case by case basis. Like I said, it works for this. Like because case by case basis. For me, in this instance, is like I'm not necessarily going to pick up the book just because I thought that movie was good. I think it's going to tie back into the shame spiel I always give of like I always view them as separate things. Like I don't to necessarily make a good adaptation of something. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be an accurate adaptation.
True.
So
did you pick up a copy of Christmas of the Cranks?
No.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I don't like that story enough to want to pick up the book for it. Maybe the book is better. I don't know, but the movie gave me no incentive to want to go and read it.
That makes sense. Rip that movie apart.
Yeah, like in the same way that I am still planning to read Secret Garden at some point because I actually did like a lot of things about the movie objectively, and I'm curious to see if it was the portrayal in the film that's really, really gave the difference between my objective and subjective, because my subjective is pretty low for that one, and my objective is fairly high, or closer to what you guys had for it.
Yeah, at least for that interpretation of the film.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where like I am still interested in reading the book for that one because I am actually curious because I could see the objective qualities there. It was just the portrayal that was getting to me. So I want to see if the book was able to portray that better for my enjoyment.
Yeah.
So
do you have? Oh.
Yeah. So back to your point, which is the movie telling me to go see the book. Again, case by case basis. I enjoy the movie enough to where I don't feel like I'm being patronized when they asked me. Because if I was watching a very terrible movie and I was told that, I'd feel like I was being patronized.
I see. Okay. Do you have any other points for Act 3?
Michael Caine's a good actor. I love it when he's crying into Ghost of Christmas Future's robe and then he wakes up in bed.
Oh, great transition. I don't know why Crimson said it was matching that of Presents, or of Pasts, of the fade on the bench, or the bridge.
We'll have to ask him on recap. I think it confused me as well.
Because this one with yet to come, I think, is way better.
Yeah. My last point, I think, is going to be... No, I got a couple last points. They all have to do with Scrooge going to talk to Bob.
Oh. Okay.
Again, really great family dynamic with Emmy Miss Piggy kind of like listening on the door, ready to throw down with Scrooge after she hears the way he's talking to her husband.
I like how physical she gets with Kermit, though.
Yeah.
Over the Bob, like literally throws him against the door out of the way.
Yeah, me too. I love that because that's
Miss Piggy.
It's Miss Piggy, and it's also it works with the family dynamic too. She's being protective of her husband. I actually very much. Beyond the fact that they're playing the Muppet characters, it's in character for this versions of the Emily and Scrooge. Because I think you said earlier that Emily's always been kind of bitter towards Scrooge because of the way her husband's been treated, and now she has the perfect excuse to kind of more throw Michael Caine in his ass if he didn't interrupt him. And This Scrooge, I think, does the most giving thing of all of them, which he straight up pays for the rest of the mortgage on their house.
That's true. He does more than just quote. I think the lowest one was it George C. Scott ones that just says double your salary.
Yeah,
Like that's a definite meaning. The other two have been raise your salary. We don't know how much that raise is, but this has more to it. This has the goose, the neighbors, the Christmas camaraderie, the paying off the mortgage. This one's the most generous act, even though he invited himself into it.
yeah. So it has the selfish aspect. It needs to be said that he's offered more to the Cratchit family as a gift in this one to make up for everything than he did in the previous iterations. Because I think he says he's gonna. I don't know. I think he does. I think he says double his salary in this too. But he also offers to pay off their mortgage.
This one, I think he said raise your salary.
Okay. Then, yeah. So he offers to raise the
Yeah.
salary.
He goes, and what he said? He said, and therefore, Bob Cratchit, I'll raise your salary. And Emily replies, well, I'll raise you right off the pavement or something like that.
So again, good back and forth. I quite enjoyed it. But I think I'm almost at the end. I'm gonna give my notes one last look through. So if you got any last
Okay.
points,
One detail I like throughout the movie, which only happens a handful of times, is live action performers and actors interacting with the Muppets, and it's not 100% wonderful. Like it's not super smooth, but it's not CGI'd over kind of usage. Like when Scrooge throws Applegate out, like he's actually holding him, but it's at the angle where it works. And then also when he like raises Tiny Tim at the dinner up onto the cushion on the table, that also works, even though that's still being puppeteered by someone.
Mhm.
So I think just like the connection of those styles that aren't green screened or forced perspective or anything like that in the practicality of what they have work well.
Yeah, I'd agree
There
with
isn't
that.
like I didn't notice there might be a goof somewhere in this movie, but I've seen it so many times I haven't noticed. There could be a thing like Jurassic Park where you see someone's hand, but
Hmm.
I haven't seen it.
I think my last note is actually on Scrooge's outfit, comparing it to what Fred was wearing at the beginning. Looking at Scrooge's outfit again, he also is wearing white underneath the coat. He has so you have the full black coat, but you can still see the white at like his collar underneath his bow tie. So it's very hidden, but he's still essentially wearing the same thing Fred was.
Oh, very cool.
So more on that, I guess, for my like of the costuming with the transition for show Scrooge's growth.
Yeah, he's
Um,
becoming more merry like Fred was.
yeah, and I think that's all I got, sir.
Looking right through, seeing anything else I had. Um, no, I think that's it. I guess the last thing I have is that the end credit song is the song Christmas Present Sings because it is the present at the end of the movie.
Hmm.
So that lines up. It's not a different song chosen throughout the movie to use.
I didn't listen to the song, admittedly. I should have
Okay.
though, because I
I
think
just like that it matches with the merriment of present for the scene being in the present. And it's not something completely like either from the past or future. Well, the future didn't have a song, but just a different song used, I guess so. All right. Well, if that's everything, then let us go into summaries and ratings where we had Crimson's already given. Let us go with Ryder next, and I'll save myself for the last.
yeah, I'm not at all shocked by what just happened. So this was an interesting one. I it probably I'll go with my subjective first. This is probably my favorite version of the movie. The story so far. Um, I guess I like the whimsical feel of it with all the Muppets and everything, and I still think they pay decent homage to the story, and we still go through all our character beats, and can't bet against Michael Caine's acting because and that is very much a subjective thing for me, but the acting also plays into who the character is, which just adds another layer to it for me. So I think I'm at an 8 subjectively. Tons of fun. I enjoy this movie quite a bit. Um, and it's a shame that I actually haven't rewatched this annually. The reason I haven't is just because don't really have my family to watch Christmas movies with, and I don't really do Christmas movies on my own. It's not really my thing to do alone.
That's true. And this one's a very fresh introduction to you.
Yeah, you did introduce it to me a couple
You
years
have
ago.
other things.
Yeah.
You have other movie traditions to see before this.
Yeah. So objectively though, um, I have a lot of parroting things to what Crimson said. I do think this movie is a little worse off as far as all the objective criticisms that are, I think, rightfully laying at it. The world building hurts a little bit from the overtness of, I guess, how the singing works. I have a very different take on that compared to you guys, but it's relevant when the ghosts are thus interacting with the song directly and the people singing it, and they aren't supposed to interact with their environment. So that unfortunately plays a kind of a bigger world building role that I'm going to add on to in regards to that. I'm trying to think of stuff that Crimson didn't say. Plot wise,
I don't think he touched on practical effects that much.
Yeah, but that doesn't really factor into my objective that much.
No. World building?
Yeah, so I guess world building is questionable at the best times. The narrator teleports around. We don't really know. He was supposed to not be in the world, but he is in the world. So they kind of flubbed the ending on that one. I think there is, again, a lot of conveniences. For the sake of the plot, the charity workers visiting Scrooge when they should know who he is because they've proven that the town knows who he is. I think the pacing of it overall is decent. I'm very happy the extended version added the song back in because the movie is kind of worse off without it. I think character-wise, I think Fred is probably comes out the weakest. This is the weakest version of Fred for me, which is a shame because I do like Fred, but that's to say it works here, but he's not as expanded upon, and the family dynamic between him and this particular Scrooge is fairly weak, which does hurt the character dynamics with that. I think the Muppet cast as their respective counterparts, like Bob and Emmy, Piggy, and insert name for anyone else, are all fairly well cast. They all work for this version of the character. I think the weakest parts of this story just happen to be, I guess, the world building that causes some issues, the plot that they do some things that should kind of just speed the plot along and the pacing, which is fine, but they are convenience for what they are. I think, strangely enough, this Scrooge comes off as an equivalent still to his counterparts, even though he has less script to work with as the character of Scrooge. I still think Michael Caine very much carried the role because you get a lot of the character writing and the way he's acting, and I brought that up a lot in this. It's still hard to imagine another actor who could play the role of this particular Scrooge as well as he did. But that being said, I do think this is a little worse than the other ones. I'm at a 6 right now, and I could possibly move up, be talked up, objectively.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure with next week's being our final one, being able to compare them all with that, because I think it's very good in the recap. So subjectivity could give it away pretty much for audience listening in and seeing that just can line up on themselves. But I think it would be cool for us to go over in the recap, not necessarily the movie of its whole, because the subjectivity gives it away, but like what's the tiering of the 4 Scrooges? What's the tiering of the 4 Cratchits? Something like that in the recap. But okay, I'll go with start with my objective. I still think that the biggest issue of this movie is Gonzo and Rizzo. I think they really don't break tone, I think, at all, because there are moments where the comedy really helps and is needed of what they do and say. And I do like the iteration of using Charles Dickens' words in a narration of a character that's in the world to describe the visuals happening. I think that's a really creative way to go about it. Also to incorporate Gonzo as a character somewhere. But them being invisible, being present, being physical presence, being not a character, helping other characters with their lines, even though it's a joke like Sam the Eagle, getting touched by Scrooge of A Merry Christmas at the end. It's very messy. And as you brought up, no matter which way you see it, if they are present or not present, it still has inconsistencies to mess with it. And I can't ignore that because it's present throughout the whole film. However, I think the acting of Michael Caine is phenomenal. This might be one of my favorite acting performances he's ever done. It's very close. I might have this over Batman Begins and Dark Knight Rises. I don't know if it's better than The Dark Knight. Actually, I said that wrong. I think this is better than the Dark Knight performance he did as Alfred, and I think this is better than the Batman Begins one. I don't know if this is better than the Dark Knight Returns, because I think out of the three, that was his best acting in that trilogy. But
Rises, I think, on the second one.
Rises, the third one. I think his acting was the best in the third one over the death of Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, I agree.
And the whole hallway scene, I think was great. Anyway, that's it. I think the acting's really good for the live action performances. I think the puppeteering of the Muppets is very well done, and there's so many different forms of Muppets in this film, which I think is really good to show different iterations. You got the Swedish chef. I don't know all the terminology of the Muppets, unfortunately, but you have the human hand, the real hands of the Muppet body. You have the full Muppet body with robotic rigateering. You have the one-handed with the stick hand. You have the two-handed where one's in the head and one's the one arm. There's just multiple uses of it throughout the whole movie, and I think it's very well done. I think the costuming is very good. Everyone's in world. Looks like a Charles Dickens novel of 1800s London. I think the lighting's really good for the stage sets. It's not great because there are some practical usages which can be seen in spotlighting in parts, but most of it really lines up well. I think the writing's very well done. Most of it is taken from the book at parts, but I think that helps it with an adaptation from a book. That it's not so much so. I think the George C. Scott had a little more of the creative liberties of lines given, which still worked with that iteration of that story, but this one I think fits more to the source material in parts. I think the song usages are really good. There are definitely the best songs and the worst songs in the movie, but I don't know any songs that would be cut out because they all fit in one way or another. We discussed over Tiny Tim's Bless Us All song would, because it's reiterating something already done. I think the practical effects are amazing. The whole Christmas Past being a Muppet in water with green screen effect to play off of that is very clever in a way. And then they all look different. And then the green screenage of the Christmas present being huge and shrinking and then shrinking down to the mouse size. Yeah, I think it's very, very well done, but it's not a perfect movie. I have my objective at a 7.5, and I know I always forget something. Oh, cinematography, I guess. Cinematography, I think there's some really, really good shots. Rules of Three and not a lot of symmetrical shots, but a lot of room setting shots, showing how small the Cratchit house is, but also comparatively of how large Scrooge's bedroom chamber is, kind of thing, just stuff like that, which also goes with the set design. Subjectively, pause for dramatic effect. This is the first for the pod from me. It's probably no surprise
to anyone who knows you.
Record-breaking. This is my first subjective 10 I'm giving for the podcast. I absolutely love and adore this movie so much. And I try to watch it every year. And it's so damn good. It's so full, that whimsical feel I absolutely crave and enjoy in a family kids movie.
And
and a
also, it's a
lot miss
Christmas
it.
movie, which doubles down for your subjective.
It does double down for me.
Yeah, because you.
Yes.
Sprinks is very, for those who aren't at home, Christmas is Sprinks' favorite holiday, and he's very unapologetic about that, and we love him for it. So it's not a shock to his friends.
Yes. I am on the hill that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Just to put it out there. So many people, I know that's a huge controversy fight thing. That's where I stand. Now, there are Christmas movies that aren't good. I can say that. Just because a movie has Christmas in it doesn't mean it's a good Christmas movie. I am knowledgeable about that. But this movie is so lovable. I'm also a big fan of the Muppets. Not as big as I probably would like to be. I haven't seen like the whole show. I haven't seen every single movie, but I know who the characters are. I know the characteristics of the characters, and I think they're very fun.
I'm happy you didn't spoil one of my specials that I have seen of the show.
Oh, I guess not. But yeah, I think it's just amazing, and it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. Off the top of my head right now, not like actually listening down, I think it's in my top 5 favorite Christmas movies ever. I don't know if it's in my top 3.
That's fair.
Because I love Die Hard. I really like Polar Express. I love Ron Howard's Grinch with Jim Carrey. The Peanuts Christmas special. I don't know if that counts as a full length. It's not a full length movie, but I don't know if that counts as a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Nightmare Before Christmas, but then again, that's a big thing if it's a Christmas or Halloween movie, so that's very like up in the air.
I don't know why people. I always say it's both. I don't know why people argue over that.
I'm saying I tend to lean as more Christmas than Halloween because Halloween's past in that movie. It never takes place on Halloween Day. Christmas Day does occur because Jack is giving out gifts on Christmas. So I think it aids more to a Christmas movie.
That's fair.
But however, it's a 10 out of me. It's my first one. A lot of people thought Paperman was going to be it, but I gave it a 9.5. I don't know if this is my biggest rating of a movie overall because this would make it a combined score. I think the biggest rating you can give is a 20, like your combined scores. This is a 17.5 for me. I'm unsure if Princess Bride has it beat.
We'll have to do some math off this.
That's definitely a recap. Yeah. Anywho, that's been our coverage of A Muppet Christmas Carol. Let us. Oh shoot! Oh, you know what? It's not. Music, right? It's not. We have one last question. Ryder, what was your favorite song and what was your least favorite song?
I hate to be a parrot, but he said it first. So, favorite song was the song that was cut. I highly recommend watching the extended version of this movie if you ever get to it. It's very emotional, even though I didn't get emotional, and I think it's very, very character rich as well, especially when you see the older version of Scrooge singing along with Belle's music. Hits you right in the feels. Good stuff. Least favorite.
The When Love Is Gone.
Yeah. Least favorite is Tiny Tim's because it can. I didn't. Granted, I wasn't like I said. I already said I'm not a huge fan of the music in this film. I do think they accomplished their objectives though. But Tiny Tim's felt the least accomplishing of the objectives. So.
Okay, and that would be a blessed song. Just to give it out to the audience looking for this. My favorite song is "It Feels Like Christmas," which is the song sung by Christmas Present. I think it's the most merriment and jolly of the songs in the movie. My least favorite is probably also "Bless Us All" by Tiny Tim. It's a good song. It just doesn't hit as strong as the others. I think the best written song, however, is "Scrooge," the first song in the movie.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair point. It does. It pretty much builds Scrooge's character.
It does, but it's very creative in the words it uses about him. That's not just like nonsensical
it's
Dr. Seuss kind of stuff.
It's interesting that the first use of the word humbug is in the song, not by Scrooge himself.
True, but his first words spoken of the character is humbug.
That's true, yes.
He comes around the corner in a Dutch angle where it's cold lighting, in dark, so you can't make out his face, and his first turnaround of the zoom in of a close-up is everyone dispersing. He says humbug before entering the office.
Yep.
It's such a cool way to introduce a character through the use of a song, scene, bits and pieces of the character before the face reveal.
Well then.
Anywho, I guess that's it then.
Yeah. Well then, audience. Well, I'm gonna read us out because I was gonna say gentlemen, but you know. Thank you, audience, for listening. Whether it be Spotify, Amazon, Castbox, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Samsung and podcasts and Good Pods. And if you happen to be on our visual side of things, watching YouTube or Rumble, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe there, and watch our Opinion Tour slideshow. Tell us how much you hate our opinions or how much you love them. As always, I have been a Geeky Writer.
We had a Crimson Maroon, and I'm Sprinks.
And we will catch you next time. Happy holidays, and later, everybody.
Toodaloo.